What if Rhaegar's dragon egg hatched for Jon Snow at Winterfell? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The Tower of Joy rises like a pale finger from the red mountains of dawn. Dust swirls around its base as 7 men approach on horseback, their banners heavy with the dire wolf of House Stark. Ned Stark rides at their head, his face grim beneath the shadow of his helm. The war is over. Robert sits the Iron Throne. But here, in this desolate place, one final duty remains. 3 figures emerge from the tower's base. White cloaks snap in the desert wind. Sir Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning, stands in the centre. Lord Commander Gerald Hightower flanks his right. Sir Oswell Whent guards the left. The finest knights in the 7 kingdoms, sworn to a dead prince's cause. "I looked for you on the Trident," Ned calls out, dismounting from his destrier. "We were not there," Sir Gerald replies, his voice carrying across the stones. "Woe to the usurper if we had been," adds Sir Oswell. The talking ends quickly. Steel rings against steel in the morning heat. Ned's companions fall one by one. Howland Reed crumples behind a boulder, clutching his side. Only when the last Kingsguard lies bleeding in the sand does Ned climb the tower steps. He finds Lyanna in a bed that smells of blood and roses. Her skin is pale as milk, her dark hair matted with sweat. In her arms, a newborn child wails with surprising strength. His eyes are dark, his hair black as a winter night. "Ned," she whispers, reaching for her brother's hand. "You came." "I promised I would." He kneels beside the bed, his sword forgotten. "Lyanna, we must get you to a Maester. You're going to be fine." She shakes her head, too weak to lift it from the pillow. "Listen to me. His name is Aegon, but you cannot call him that. Robert will kill him if he knows." Her grip tightens on Ned's fingers. "Promise me, Ned. Promise me you'll protect him." "I promise." The words come easily, though their weight settles like stones in his chest. He'll be safe. I swear it. But Lyanna's eyes drift to something beyond the bed. There's more. In Rhaegar's chambers. He left something for the child. Her breathing grows shallow. "Go." Before anyone else comes. Ned hesitates, unwilling to leave his sister's side. But her eyes insist, and he knows these may be her final words. He climbs the narrow stairs to the upper chamber. The room is sparse, furnished only with a bed, a chest, and a small table. Rhaegar's harp sits in the corner, its silver strings gleaming in the dusty light. Ned searches quickly, his heart hammering. In the bottom of the chest, wrapped in silk the color of old blood, his fingers close around something smooth and warm. He lifts out a dragon egg. It's smaller than his fist, deep red with veins of black running across its surface. The shell seems to pulse with inner heat, as if something stirs within. Ned stares at it, memories flooding back. The Mad King's obsession with dragons, Rhaegar's strange prophecies about ice and fire, the burning of his father and brother. A piece of parchment lies beneath the silk. Rhaegar's careful script covers the page. "For my son, should the gods will his birth. What was lost may yet return. Fire and blood, but tempered with ice and honor. Let him choose his own path between the two." Ned crushes the note in his fist, but the egg remains in his other hand, warm as a living thing. Every instinct screams at him to cast it into the desert sands. Dragons brought nothing but death to his family. But Lyanna's words echo in his mind, and something in Rhaegar's message gives him pause. He wraps the egg again and tucks it into his cloak. When he returns to Lyanna's chamber, she is barely breathing. Her eyes find his, questioning. "I have it," he tells her simply. She nods, a ghost of relief crossing her features. "Promise me, Ned. Both of them." "I promise." Lyanna Stark dies with the dawn, her hand in her brother's. Ned closes her eyes and lifts the child. Jon, he decides, for Jon Arryn, who raised him like a son. The babe fusses against his chest, small fists waving. The journey north stretches long and weary. Ned rides with the child in his arms, the dragon egg hidden in his saddlebags. Each league brings fresh doubt. What is he thinking, bringing such a thing to Winterfell? Robert's hatred of Targaryens runs deep as the sea. If anyone discovers what he carries, it will mean death for them all. Yet something keeps him from abandoning the egg at some roadside inn. Perhaps it's Lyanna's dying wish. Perhaps it's the strange warmth that seems to emanate from within the shell. Or perhaps it's the way young Jon grows calm whenever they stop to rest near the bags, as if he senses something familiar. At River Run, Catelyn waits with their son. Robb is barely a moon older than Jon, red-haired and strong-lunged. She holds him protectively when Ned approaches with the dark-haired babe. "Whose child is this?" she asks, her voice carefully controlled. "Mine." The lie tastes like ashes. "His mother died in childbirth." Catelyn's face hardens, but she nods. She's heard the rumors of bastards born during war. She doesn't ask the woman's name, and Ned doesn't offer it. That night, alone in their chamber, Ned unwraps the dragon egg. It pulses softly in the candlelight, beautiful and terrible. Catelyn sleeps beside him, one arm around Robb's cradle. In the smaller cradle, Jon stirs and coos, his eyes tracking to the egg as if drawn by invisible threads. Ned makes his decision. The egg will come to Winterfell, hidden, protected, but close to the child it was meant for. Whatever Rhaegar intended, whatever prophecy drove him to preserve this last remnant of his line's power, it will remain Jon's choice whether to claim it. He wraps the egg again and places it carefully in his travel pack. Jon settles into peaceful sleep, and for the first time since the Tower of Joy, Ned allows himself to hope that he's chosen correctly. The road to Winterfell stretches ahead, and with it, a future none of them can foresee. In his baggage, a dragon's egg waits to change the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. In his arms, a child carries the blood of ice and fire, destined for greatness or destruction. Only the old gods know which it will be. 3 weeks later, the gates of Winterfell open to welcome them home. The household gathers in the courtyard. Maester Luwin with his grey robes and chain, old Nan with her knowing eyes, the guards and servants who have served House Stark for generations. They see their lord return with his wife, his true-born heir, and his bastard son. What they don't see is the dragon egg hidden among his possessions, carried into the ancient stronghold like a sleeping ember waiting to burst into flame. As they climb the steps to the great hall, Jon's small hand reaches out from his swaddling, grasping at the air as if he can sense what waits in the darkness. The age of dragons has returned to Westeros, brought not by conquest or fire, but by a grieving brother's promise and a dying woman's last wish. And in the crypts beneath Winterfell, where the stone kings of winter sleep their eternal sleep, something ancient stirs in recognition. The dragon has come home. The crypts of Winterfell echo with small footsteps in the deep hours before dawn. Jon Snow toddles through the narrow passages, his dark hair catching what little light filters down from above. He moves with purpose, unusual for a child of 3 name days, drawn by something he cannot name. Behind him, the stone kings of winter watch from their alcoves, ancient swords across their knees. Their carved eyes seem to follow his progress as he makes his way deeper into the earth, past his grandfather's tomb, past kings whose names are lost to time. Ned finds him there as the sun rises, sitting cross-legged before a plain stone wall. The child traces patterns in the dust with one small finger, humming a tune no one has taught him. His breath mists in the cold air, yet his cheeks remain flushed with warmth. "Jon," Ned calls softly, kneeling beside his son. "What are you doing down here?" The boy looks up with eyes dark as storm clouds. "Listening," he says simply. "It's calling." Ned's blood chills. Behind that very wall, wrapped in oiled leather and hidden in a niche, carved by his own hands, the dragon egg waits in darkness. He placed it there 3 years ago, thinking stone and earth would muffle whatever power it might hold. Yet somehow, impossibly, the child knows. "What's calling, Jon?" "The singing stone." Jon's small hand presses against the wall. For a moment, Ned swears he sees a faint glow seep between the child's fingers. It wants to come out. Ned lifts Jon into his arms, feeling the boy's unusual warmth, even through his thick clothes. "Come, your mother has breakfast ready." In the great hall, Catelyn sits with Robb at her breast and newborn Sansa sleeping in her cradle. The morning light catches the red in Robb's hair as he nurses, while Sansa's auburn curls frame a face that already shows promise of her mother's beauty. Both children are warm and pink with health, as proper babes should be. Jon's warmth is different. It radiates from within like banked coals, steady and strange. When Catelyn touches his forehead to check for fever, she pulls her hand back quickly. "He's burning up," she says, alarm creeping into her voice. "He's not sick," Ned assures her, though doubt gnaws at him. "Maester Luwin says some children run warm." Maester Luwin arrives within the hour, his chain clinking softly as he examines Jon. The boy sits perfectly still, allowing the old man to peer into his eyes, listen to his breathing, feel the pulse in his small wrist. "Remarkable," Luwin murmurs. "His heart beats strong as a war horse, yet he shows no signs of fever or illness. His pupils respond normally to light. His breathing is clear." He straightens, adjusting his chain thoughtfully. "Some bloodlines run hot, my lord. The Targaryens were known for it." Catelyn's expression hardens at the mention of the Dragon Kings. Ned forces his face to remain neutral, but his pulse quickens. "The mother was from Dorne," he lies. "Perhaps it's the southern blood." That evening, as Winterfell settles into winter's embrace, Jon stands at his chamber window, watching snow fall. The other children sleep peacefully, but Jon remains wide awake, his small hands pressed against the cold glass. "Can't sleep again?" Old Nan hobbles into the chamber, her gnarled hands carrying a cup of warm milk sweetened with honey. She's tended Stark children for 50 years, watching them grow from babes to lords. But Jon puzzles her. "The cold makes me restless," Jon says, though his skin remains warm to the touch. "Aye, winter can be hard on some folk." Old Nan settles into the chair beside his bed, her ancient bones creaking. "Would you like a story?" Jon nods eagerly. Old Nan's stories are his favourite part of each day, filled with knights and heroes, monsters and magic. "Long ago," she begins in her cracked voice, "before the conquest, before even the kings of winter ruled the north, there were dragons in these lands. Great beasts with wings like thunderclouds and breath like the fires of the earth itself." Jon turns from the window, his dark eyes reflecting the candlelight. "Were they real?" "Oh, they were real enough, child. Real as you or me. The dragon lords rode them across the narrow sea, bringing fire and blood to the 7 kingdoms. But dragons are proud creatures, and they choose their riders carefully." She leans closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They say a dragon knows its own blood, no matter how far it travels or how long it sleeps. What happened to them? They died, one by one, until only bones remained. But some say that's not the end of the tale. Some say dragons never truly die, only sleep until the world has need of them again." Jon drinks his milk thoughtfully. "Old Nan, what does dragonfire feel like?" Hot as the heart of the earth, child. Hot enough to melt stone and steel. But to a dragon lord, it feels like coming home. That night, Jon dreams of flying. He soars above mountains and seas, his shadow racing across the ground far below. The wind sings in his ears, and beneath him, the world spreads like a great map. He feels no fear, only joy and freedom beyond imagining. When he wakes, his bedsheets are warm and dry, despite the cold chamber. Across the room, young Robb shivers beneath his furs. But Jon feels perfectly comfortable. He closes his eyes and tries to return to the dream, to that sense of belonging among the clouds. In the days that follow, Ned watches Jon with growing unease. The boy's behavior becomes more unusual with each passing week. He seeks out the warmest spots in Winterfell, the kitchens where the great hearths burn day and night, the smithy where the forge glows red-hot, the chambers where braziers ward off winter's bite. Yet cold affects him strangely too. While other children huddle near fires, Jon walks barefoot through snow that should numb his feet. He sleeps with his window open, letting winter wind fill his chamber. When Catelyn scolds him for it, he simply says the cold feels good on his skin. It's not natural, Catelyn tells Ned one evening as they prepare for bed. Robb catches chill if I let him play too long in the snow, but Jon acts as if winter cannot touch him. And the warmth that comes off him, it's like he has a fever that never breaks. Ned knows she speaks truly. Jon's skin grows warmer each day, yet he shows no signs of sickness. If anything, he appears healthier than other children his age. He grows quickly, his limbs strong and sure. His mind develops with startling speed, learning words and numbers faster than Maester Luwin expects. Perhaps he's just hardy, Ned offers weakly. Northern blood runs strong. This isn't northern blood. Catelyn's voice carries quiet certainty. This is something else entirely. What aren't you telling me about his mother? Ned turns away, unable to meet her eyes. She's dead. That's all that matters. But Catelyn's suspicions only deepen when Jon begins speaking of his dreams. He tells old Nan about flying over castles she's never described to him. He draws pictures of creatures with wings and flames, though no one has shown him images of dragons. Most troubling of all, he knows things he shouldn't know. The dragons slept under the ground, he tells Robb one afternoon, as they play with wooden toys by the fire. In the deep places where it's warm, they're waiting for someone to wake them up. Robb, practical even at 3, frowns at his milk brother. Dragons are dead, Jon. Everyone knows that. Not dead. Sleeping. Jon's eyes take on that distant look that unnerves the adults. I can hear them sometimes, when it's very quiet. They're singing. That night, Ned makes his way down to the crypts alone. The dragon egg rests where he placed it 3 years ago, hidden behind stones that have remained undisturbed. Yet when he unwraps it, the shell feels warmer than before. In the candle light, the red and black surface seems to pulse like a slow heartbeat. He rewraps the egg quickly and seals it away again, but doubt gnaws at him as he climbs back to the castle proper. The wall between Jon and his inheritance grows thinner with each passing day. Soon, Ned fears, it will not be enough to contain what stirs within both child and egg. As winter deepens around Winterfell, Jon Snow grows stranger still. His warmth becomes a constant presence in any room he enters. His dreams fill with fire and flight. And in the depths below, where stone kings keep their silent watch, something ancient responds to the call of dragon blood. The egg waits, patient as stone but alive as flame, counting the days until it can fulfill the destiny Rhaegar Targaryen intended for his son. In the world above, a child who bears the name of Winter learns he was born to be a creature of fire. The transformation has begun, though none yet understand what it will mean for the 7 kingdoms when the dragon's blood finally awakens in full. The God's Wood of Winterfell stands silent in the autumn air. Red leaves drift from the heart tree. settling on the dark pool at its roots. Jon Snow sits cross-legged before the ancient weirwood, his 6-year-old form still as carved stone. His eyes remain closed, but his lips move in words no one has taught him. Old Valyrian spills from his mouth like water from a spring. The language of dragons flows naturally, though he's never heard it spoken. Deep beneath the castle, something stirs in response to his call. In the crypts, wrapped in oiled leather behind cold stone, the dragon egg pulses with newfound life. Veins of gold flicker across its red and black surface, growing brighter with each word Jon speaks. The shell, hard as steel for 3 years, begins to soften. What was stone becomes flesh. What was dead grows warm with promise. "Jon!" Robb's voice breaks the spell. The older boy comes crashing through the undergrowth, his auburn hair bright against the grey sky. "Father's looking for you. Uncle Benjen's come from Castle Black." Jon's eyes snap open, the strange words dying on his lips. For a moment he looks confused, as if waking from a deep dream. Then excitement replaces bewilderment. Uncle Benjen visits rarely, and when he does, he brings stories of the wall and the world beyond. They race back to the castle together, Jon's unusual warmth creating small clouds of steam in the cool air. In the great hall, Benjen Stark stands before the hearth, still wearing his black cloak and muddy boots. He embraces Ned with the easy affection of brothers, then turns his attention to the children. Robb receives a firm handshake and praise for his sword work. Sansa, now 3 and beautiful as her mother, earns gentle words about her needlework. But when Benjen's eyes fall on Jon, something changes in his expression. "My, how you've grown," he says softly, kneeling to Jon's level. His weathered hand touches the boy's cheek, and he pulls back slightly at the warmth. "You've got the look of the old kings about you, lad." Something in the eyes. Jon beams under his uncle's attention, unaware of the meaningful glance Benjen shares with Ned across the hall. Later that evening, when the children are abed, the brothers speak in private. "There's something different about Jon," Benjen says without preamble. They stand in Ned's solar, cups of wine untouched between them. "I felt it the moment I touched him. Heat like a forge fire, but pleasant rather than painful. And those words he was speaking in the Godswood, you heard them?" "Aye. Old Valyrian, unless I miss my guess. Where would he learn such a thing?" Ned's silence stretches long. Finally he asks, "What do you know of the old dragon lords? Their bloodline traits?" Benjen's eyebrows rise. "Legends mostly. They say Targaryens ran hot, never felt cold the way other men do. Some could touch flame without burning. There are stories of dragon dreams, prophetic visions that came true." He studies his brother's face carefully. "Why do you ask?" "No reason. Idle curiosity." But Benjen isn't fooled. "Ned, if there's something I should know—" "Some things are better left buried," Ned cuts him off. "Jon is my son. That's all anyone needs to know." The next morning brings disaster. In the castle's inner ward, Sir Roderick trains the boys in swordwork, while the younger children watch. Jon holds his wooden blade with unusual skill for his age, parrying Robb's attacks with growing confidence. Nearby, 3-year-old Sansa plays with her doll, and baby Arya sleeps in Catelyn's arms. Jeren, the blacksmith's son, swaggers over with his friends. At 10 years old, he towers over the Stark children, his face already showing the cruel streak that marks some men from birth. He's resented Jon for months, jealous of the bastard's quick learning and easy manner with sword and horse. "Look at the bastard play at being a lordling," Jeren sneers loud enough for all to hear. "Thinks he's as good as true-born sons." Robb bristles, stepping forward with blade raised. "Watch your tongue, Jon's my brother." "Half-brother," Jeren corrects with a nasty smile. "Born of some tavern wench your father tumbled in the war. My father says bastards always think too highly of themselves." Jon's grip tightens on his wooden sword, but he says nothing. Heat builds in his chest, uncomfortable and strange. The air around him seems to shimmer slightly. Jeren notices Sansa playing quietly in the corner. Maybe the bastard gets his airs from his pretty sister. Thinks she'll grow up to be a whore like his mother? The insult hangs in the air like smoke. Jon takes a step forward, his dark eyes blazing with sudden fury. "Don't you dare!" Jeren shoves him hard, sending Jon stumbling backward. "What'll you do about it, bastard? Cry to your Lord Father?" Jon's hands come up instinctively to catch himself. The moment Jeren's skin touches his palms, flame erupts between them. The blacksmith's son screams as fire engulfs his arms. Real flames, hot and bright as any forge, burst from Jon's small hands. The smell of burning cloth and flesh fills the courtyard as Jeren staggers backward, beating at the fires that cling to his sleeves. "Seven hells!" Sir Roderick rushes forward with his cloak, smothering the flames before they can spread further. Jeren collapses, sobbing and clutching his burned arms. The wounds are real but not deadly. Blistered skin and singed hair that will heal with time and care. Jon stares at his own hands in horror. They look perfectly normal, unmarked by the flames that poured from them moments ago. Around the courtyard, servants and guards gape in shock. Some touch iron talismans or mutter prayers to the Seven. "Get Maester Luwin," Ned commands, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. Now. That evening, after Jeren has been treated and sent home with his terrified father, Ned sits alone in his solar with Maester Luwin. The old man's grey eyes hold a mixture of curiosity and concern as he reviews what he witnessed. "The boy shows clear signs of the old bloodline traits," Luwin says carefully. "Fire resistance, unusual body heat, and now this, the ability to call flame with will and emotion. These are the gifts of old Valyria. Lord Stark. The question is how Jon came by them." Ned stares into his wine cup, seeing his reflection waver in the dark liquid. "If you were to guess, Targaryen blood runs true, even when diluted. A child might inherit such traits from a parent or grandparent of that lineage." Luwin's voice grows gentle. "Jon's mother, was she perhaps connected to the Dragon Kings?" "She's dead. Her name dies with her." "As you wish, my lord. But the boy's abilities will only grow stronger as he ages. Soon, hiding them will become impossible. Ned knows the truth of it. Today's display has shown him that Jon's power can no longer be contained by silence and secrecy. The servants will talk, rumors will spread, and eventually word will reach King's Landing. Robert's hatred of Targaryens runs deep as winter cold." "What would you advise?" Maester Luwin considers carefully. "The boy needs guidance in controlling his gifts. Without proper training, fear or anger might trigger incidents far worse than today's. And he needs to understand what he is before others tell him first." That night, Ned makes his decision. He descends to the crypts alone, carrying torch and crowbar. The passage seems longer in the flickering light, the stone kings more watchful than usual. At the hidden niche, he breaks away the stones he set 3 years before. The dragon egg waits within, but it has changed. Where once it was cold and lifeless, now it pulses with inner warmth. Cracks of gold run across its surface like veins of light. When Ned touches it, the shell feels soft as leather rather than hard as stone. "By the old gods," he whispers, "what have I done?" He wraps the egg carefully and carries it up to the castle proper. Jon sleeps peacefully in the chamber he shares with Robb, unaware that his life is about to change forever. Ned places the wrapped bundle in the chest beside Jon's bed, then sits watching his son's sleeping face. In his dreams, Jon soars above mountains of ice and rivers of fire. Dragons with wings like storm clouds race beside him, through skies painted in impossible colors. Ancient voices whisper secrets in languages older than the 7 kingdoms. When he wakes, the dawn light reveals something wonderful on his pillow. A crack runs down the center of what he thought was just an old stone. Through the fissure, golden light seeps like captured sunlight. The egg, for now he knows what it truly is, trembles with life that calls to something deep in his blood. Jon reaches out with trembling fingers to touch the crack. At his contact, the light grows brighter, and from within the shell comes a sound like distant singing. Dragon song, wordless but full of meaning, joy and recognition and homecoming, all wrapped in notes too pure for human voice. "Father," Jon whispers, but Ned has already gone to break his fast. The boy is alone with his inheritance, alone with the egg that will change everything. Outside his window, autumn fades toward winter. In the distance, ravens take flight from Winterfell's rookery, carrying word to the farthest corners of the realm. The Dragon of Winterfell has been born, though none yet understand what it means. In his small hands, Jon Snow holds the future of the Seven Kingdoms, wrapped in shell and flame, and the dreams of ancient kings. Spring arrives strangely to Winterfell in the year 291 AC. The snows melt too quickly, revealing grass that grows green in patterns like dragon scales. In the kennels, hounds birth litters with eyes of gold instead of brown. The ravens in the rookery lay eggs twice their normal size, and when they hatch, the chicks sing with voices too sweet for common birds. Jon Snow sits in his chamber before dawn, the dragon egg cradled in his small hands. At 8 years old, he understands what others only guess at. The egg speaks to him now, not in words, but in feelings that flow between them like warm honey. It tells him of skies vast as oceans and flames that dance with joy rather than destruction. "Soon," he whispers to the shell, running his fingers along the golden cracks that spread wider each day. "Soon you'll be free." The egg pulses in response, its inner light growing bright enough to read by. Jon no longer needs candles in his chamber. The dragon's glow provides all the illumination he requires, painting the stone walls in shades of amber and crimson. Below in the great hall, Maester Luwin reports the morning's oddities to Ned Stark. "The goats on Micken's farm birthed kids with silver wool, my lord. The well water tastes of sulphur, though it runs clear as crystal. And the children in Wintertown speak of dreams filled with fire and wings." Ned's jaw tightens. Each strange sign points to the same source. The dragon egg hidden in his son's chamber grows stronger with each passing day. Power builds in Winterfell like pressure in a sealed pot, and soon something must give way. "There's more, my lord," Luwin continues, his chain clinking softly. Riders approach from the south. Foreign men in red robes, bearing the sigil of R'hllor. They seek audience with the Lord of Winterfell. Before Ned can respond, Catelyn enters with young Bran toddling at her side. At 1 year old, the boy moves with unusual steadiness for his age, his dark blue eyes bright with curiosity. He babbles cheerfully as he explores the hall, drawn inevitably toward the hearth, where flames dance behind iron grating. "Keep him away from the fire," Catelyn warns the wet nurse. "He's been fascinated by it lately, reaching for the flames as if they won't burn him." Ned watches his youngest son with growing unease. First Jon, now Bran. Are all his children touched by whatever power stirs in Winterfell? The thought chills him more than winter wind. The Red Priests arrive at midday, their crimson robes bright against the grey stones of Winterfell. 3 men, all bearing the sacred flames of R'hllor, tattooed on their faces. Their leader, tall and gaunt with eyes like coals, bows formally to Ned in the courtyard. "Lord Stark," the priest says, in accented common tongue, "I am Thoros of Myr, servant of the Lord of Light. We have travelled far to witness the miracles spoken of in flames and prophecy." "I don't know what you mean," Ned replies carefully. "The child of ice and fire, born to unite the ancient powers. The dragon prince who will rise in the land of winter wolves." Thoros's eyes scan the assembled household, lingering on each child in turn. The flames sing of him across the narrow sea. R'hllor has shown us his face in sacred visions. Jon stands with his siblings, trying to appear normal despite the heat that radiates from his small frame. But Thoris's gaze finds him immediately, and the priest's weathered face transforms with recognition. "There," he breathes, pointing directly at Jon. "The dragon child walks among us. I see the fire of old Valyria burning in his blood." "You're mistaken," Ned says firmly. "Jon is my son. Nothing more. Indeed, he is your son, Lord Stark. But he is something more as well." Thoros approaches slowly, his movements careful and respectful. "May I?" Against his better judgment, Ned nods. The priest kneels before Jon, studying the boy's dark eyes with intense concentration. "You dream of flying, don't you, young prince? Of flames that feel like home, and voices that sing in the old tongue?" Jon's composure cracks slightly. "How do you know?" "Because Rhaegar shows faithful servants what they need to see. The prince that was promised walks among us, though he wears a wolf's name rather than a dragon's." Thoros places his hand on Jon's shoulder and jerks it back immediately, hissing in surprise. 7 hells, the boy burns like a forge. That afternoon, while the Red Priests take refreshment in the Great Hall, disaster strikes in the First Keep. Little Bran, exploring with a toddler's fearless curiosity, climbs onto a low windowsill in one of the towers. The wet nurse turns her attention for just a moment, and the boy tumbles out, falling toward the cobbles below. Jon, playing with wooden swords in the courtyard, hears his mother's scream. He looks up to see Bran falling, small arms windmilling helplessly in the air. Without thinking, Jon closes his eyes and reaches out with something deeper than his hands. "Please," he whispers desperately, "don't let him die." Power flows out of him like water from a broken dam. The air around Bran shimmers, and suddenly the boy's fall slows, as if he drops through thick honey instead of empty space. He lands softly on a pile of hay that wasn't there moments before, crying from fear, but miraculously unhurt. Catelyn rushes to gather her son, checking frantically for broken bones or bleeding. She finds nothing worse than a few scratches and a terrible fright. But when she looks up, her eyes find Jon standing motionless in the courtyard, his face pale with exhaustion. "What did you do?" she whispers. Jon opens his mouth to answer, but no words come. He doesn't understand what happened any more than she does. He only knows that Bran needed help, and somehow he provided it. Thoros appears at Catelyn's shoulder, his eyes alight with religious fervor. The power manifests more strongly each day. Soon it will be impossible to contain. That evening, as servants whisper of miracles and strange happenings, Jon retreats to the God's Wood for solitude. The heart tree's red leaves flutter in the breeze, and the black pool reflects stars just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. He sits beneath the ancient weirwood, trying to understand the power that flows through him like fire in his veins. But his emotions run too high, his control too weak. As he thinks of Bran falling, of Catelyn's frightened eyes, of the Red Priests and their talk of prophecies, heat builds in his chest. The feeling grows until it becomes unbearable, and Jon throws back his head and screams. Fire pours out of him like a dam bursting. Flames rush up the heart tree's pale trunk, turning red leaves to ash and blackening the ancient bark. The godswood erupts in light as every tree catches fire simultaneously, creating a blaze visible from Wintertown. Jon collapses as the power leaves him, watching in horror as the sacred grove burns around him. The weirwood alone remains untouched, its carved face seeming to watch him with understanding rather than judgment. Within moments, half of Winterfell arrives with buckets and cloaks to fight the flames, but the fire dies as suddenly as it began, leaving behind charred stumps and smoking earth. Only the heart tree stands unmarked, its red leaves intact and face serene. "By the old gods and the new," Ser Rodrik breathes, staring at the devastation. "What happened here?" All eyes turn to Jon, still kneeling among the ashes. He looks up at the gathered crowd, servants, guards, his family, the Red Priests, and sees the mixture of fear and awe in their faces. "I'm sorry," he whispers. "I didn't mean to." Thoros steps forward, his voice carrying across the ruined godswood. The dragon wakes, as was foretold. Ice and fire unite in the blood of the Chosen One. That night, Catelyn corners Ned in their private chambers. Her face shows a mother's fierce determination, mixed with growing fear. "No more lies," she demands. "No more half-truths about tavern wenches and southern blood. I've watched that boy for 8 years, Ned. I've seen him grow stranger with each passing season. Tonight he burned the entire godswood with a word and saved Bran's life with his will alone. What is Jon Snow?" Ned stands before their chamber's hearth, watching flames dance behind iron grating. The fire seems tame and small after witnessing what his son can do. "Some truths are too dangerous to speak aloud," he says finally. "More dangerous than what's happening now. The Red Priests call him the Prince that was promised. They speak of prophecies and ancient powers. The servants whisper that he's the Dragon of Winterfell returned from legend." Catelyn's voice grows harder. "What happens when word of this reaches King's Landing? What happens when Robert learns there's a boy in the north who commands fire like the Targaryens of old?" Ned has no answer for her. He's asked himself the same questions every night for months. In Jon's chamber, the dragon egg has changed yet again. The network of golden cracks now covers its entire surface, pulsing with light that brightens and dims like a heartbeat. When Jon holds it, the shell feels soft as silk rather than hard as stone. Through the walls of Winterfell, the small folk of Wintertown gather in their common rooms to speak in hushed voices of the Dragon of Winterfell. Children tell stories of the boy who saved his brother with magic, who burned the godswood without being touched by flame. The tales grow with each telling, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. By morning, ravens will carry word to the far corners of the 7 kingdoms. The Dragon of Winterfell is no longer just a child with strange dreams. He is a power that can no longer be hidden, a flame that will not be contained. And in his small hands, an egg older than the conquest prepares to reveal what it has carried within itself for nearly 300 years. The Age of Dragons returns to Westeros, whether the realm is ready or not. The training yard of Winterfell rings with the clash of steel on steel in the crisp morning air of 293 AC. Jon Snow, now 10 years old, moves through his sword forms with fluid grace that unnerves even Ser Roderick. His blade seems to dance in his hands, guided by reflexes too quick for a boy his age. Steam rises from his skin despite the autumn chill, and his dark eyes hold depths that speak of power barely contained. Watching from the sidelines, Theon Greyjoy leans against the practice dummy with practiced indifference. At 14, the heir to Pike has spent 4 years at Winterfell as ward to House Stark, and he's grown accustomed to the peculiarities of his foster family. But Jon has always unsettled him in ways he can't explain. There's something predatory about the boy's stillness, something that makes Theon's instincts scream danger even when Jon smiles. "You're holding back again," Robb calls out to his half-brother as they circle each other with blunted steel. Both boys are matched in age and size, but their styles differ greatly. Robb fights with northern directness, solid, dependable, honorable. Jon flows like water around his attacks, striking from unexpected angles with speed that shouldn't be possible. "I don't want to hurt you," Jon replies truthfully. The power that burns in his veins grows stronger each day, and with it comes the fear of losing control. 2 nights ago, he accidentally melted his eating knife by gripping it too tightly during supper. Yesterday, he left handprints burned into the wooden rail of the bridge over the moat. In his chamber, the dragon egg pulses like a beating heart. The shell has grown so thin that light bleeds through constantly, painting his walls in shifting patterns of gold and crimson. Sometimes when the castle is very quiet, he swears he can hear something moving within, claws scraping against the inner surface, wings rustling in their confined space. The dragon grows restless, he whispers to the egg each night. Soon, I promise. The attack comes at midday, when the household least expects it. 50 men emerge from the wolfswood like wraiths, their faces hidden behind rough cloth masks. Deserters from various armies, broken men with nothing left to lose. They've heard rumors of the wealth stored in Winterfell's vaults and the strange boy who commands fire. Their leader, a scarred brute who once served House Bolton, believes the tales of magic are mere superstition. Dragons died out centuries ago, and fire tricks can be explained by clever sleight of hand. A 10-year-old bastard, no matter how strange, poses no real threat to men with steel in their hands. The first warning comes from the guards at the Hunter's Gate. A horn blast echoes across the courtyard as armed men pour through the breach they've forced in the outer defences. Most of Winterfell's garrison is scattered, some hunting in the Wolfswood, others ranging along the roads to the south. Only a handful of guards remain to defend the castle. "Get the children to safety," Ned shouts, drawing his great sword ice as he runs toward the sound of battle. But the attackers move with practiced coordination, splitting their forces to sweep through multiple entrances simultaneously. Jon finds himself cut off from the main keep, separated from his family by a tide of desperate men with bloody intentions. He carries only a practice sword, blunted steel that will do little against mail and leather. Behind him, Arya and Bran play in the Godswood, unaware of the danger approaching through the castle. "Well, well," the scarred leader calls out, as he spots Jon standing alone in the courtyard. "The famous bastard of Winterfell, you're smaller than I expected." 3 of his men spread out to flank Jon, their weapons drawn and ready. They see only a boy with a toy sword, not understanding what they truly face. "Stay back," Jon warns, his voice carrying a note of authority that makes them hesitate. Heat builds in his chest, familiar and terrible. "I don't want to hurt anyone." The leader laughs, a harsh sound like grinding stone. "The whelp has teeth. Don't worry, boy. We'll make it quick. After we're done with you, we'll see what your pretty sisters are worth." The threat to his family shatters Jon's careful control like glass under a hammer. Rage erupts from somewhere deeper than bone, older than thought. His practice sword begins to glow cherry red in his grip, and the air around him shimmers with rising heat. "You will not touch them," he says, and his voice carries echoes of dragon song. Fire bursts from Jon's hands like liquid sunlight, streaming toward the attackers in torrents of white-hot flame. The bandits scream as their clothes ignite, as their weapons melt in their hands. The scarred leader staggers backward, beating at flames that cling to his flesh like living things. But the effort costs Jon dearly. Blood wells from his nose and ears as power tears through him unchecked. He falls to his knees, gasping, as more bandits pour into the courtyard. His fire dies to embers, leaving him defenseless before men who've seen their companions burn. "Kill him!" the leader roars, his face a ruin of blistered skin. "Kill the demon spawn!" A crossbow bolt flies toward Jon's chest. Time seems to slow as he watches death approach, too weak to dodge or summon flame again. But the bolt never finds its target. In his chamber above, the dragon egg splits apart, like a flower opening to the sun. Light explodes from the broken shell, brilliant as a star being born. The creature that emerges is small enough to fit in a man's cupped hands, but it radiates presence that fills the air like thunder. Red scales shimmer with veins of black along its serpentine body. Wings spread wide despite their delicate size, membranes stretched tight over elegant bone. Golden eyes, ancient and intelligent, survey its surroundings with immediate understanding. The dragon knows its purpose as surely as rivers know the sea. With a cry like silver bells and breaking glass, the hatchling launches itself from the tower window. It streaks across the courtyard like a falling star, growing larger with each wingbeat, as if size is merely a matter of will. The bandits freeze in terror as shadow passes over them. They look up to see death descending on wings of flame, small but terrible in its newborn fury. The dragon's roar echoes off Winterfell's walls, a sound that awakens ancestral fears buried deep in human memory. Jon feels the connection the moment their eyes meet. Mind touches mind across the space between them, dragon and dragonlord recognizing one another with joy that transcends words. The bond snaps into place like a key turning in a lock, and suddenly Jon is no longer alone in his own head. "Dracarys," he whispers, giving voice to the first word that comes to him. Fire. It seems fitting for something born from flame and fury. The dragon, Dracarys, circles the courtyard once before, diving toward the remaining bandits. He's grown to the size of a hunting hound now, his presence commanding despite his youth. Fire streams from his jaws, not the wild torrent of Jon's power, but controlled dragon flame that burns exactly what he intends. The battle ends quickly. Those bandits who can still run flee into the wolfswood, abandoning their wounded and dead. The scarred leader lies motionless in the center of the courtyard, his ambitions reduced to ash and bone. Dracarys lands beside Jon with feline grace, his golden eyes reflecting concern for his bonded partner. The dragon's warmth flows through their connection, steadying Jon as he struggles to his feet. When he places his hand on Dracarys' neck, the scales feel like warm silk beneath his palm. "By the old gods and the new," Sir Roderick breathes as he arrives with the remaining guards. A dragon, a living dragon in Winterfell. Word spreads through the castle like wildfire. Servants peer from doorways and windows to catch glimpses of the impossible. Children whisper in corridors about the dragon of Winterfell who has finally claimed his birthright. The Red Priests, still guests in the castle, fall to their knees in religious ecstasy. "The prince that was promised!" Thoros of Myre cries out, his hands raised toward the sky. "Rulla's chosen walks among us with fire made flesh." But Ned Stark sees only the end of all his careful plans. He stares at his son and the dragon perched beside him, understanding that their quiet life in the north has ended forever. A boy with strange dreams might be hidden. A boy with a living dragon cannot. "We need to send ravens," he tells Maester Luwin quietly. "To my brother at the wall, to Lord Arryn in the Vale. They need to know what's coming." "And to King's Landing?" Luwin asks. Ned's silence stretches long. Robert's hatred of Targaryens runs deeper than the roots of mountains. When word reaches the capital, and it will reach the capital, the king will march north with the full strength of the realm to destroy what he sees as a renewed threat to his rule. That evening, Jon sits in the godswood with Dracarys coiled around his shoulders like a living necklace. The dragon's presence feels like coming home after a long journey, like finding the missing piece of himself he never knew was gone. Through their bond, he senses Dracarys' contentment, the simple joy of being finally free after so long confined. "What happens now?" Jon asks the night air. The heart tree offers no answer, its carved face as enigmatic as ever. But in the distance, ravens take wing from Winterfell's rookery, carrying word to the farthest corners of the Seven Kingdoms. The dragon of Winterfell is no longer myth or rumor. He is flesh and blood and fire, and the realm will never be the same. Dracarys chirps softly, nuzzling Jon's cheek with surprising gentleness for a creature born of flame. Whatever comes next, they will face it together. Dragon and Dragonlord, ice and fire united at last. In the depths of Winterfell's crypts, the Stone Kings seem to shift in their eternal rest. The Age of Dragons has returned to the north, and even the dead take notice of powers not seen for 3 centuries. Above them, a boy and his dragon prepare to change the fate of the world. Dawn breaks cold and clear over Winterfell in the year 295 AEC, painting the ancient stones in shades of gold and grey. In the hidden valley beyond the castle's eastern walls, Jon Snow kneels beside a stream that runs swift and dark between snow-laden banks. At 12 years old, he has grown tall and lean, his face showing the first hints of the man he will become. But it's the creature beside him that draws the eye. Dracarys perches on a fallen log, his scales gleaming like polished rubies in the morning light. 2 years have seen the dragon grow from hatchling to the size of a large hunting hound, his wingspan now broad enough to cast meaningful shadows. Red membranes stretch between delicate bones, and his golden eyes hold intelligence that seems almost human in its depth. "Ready?" Jon asks softly, running his hand along the dragon's neck. The scales feel warm even in the winter air, and through their bond he senses Dracarys' eager anticipation. The dragon chirps once, then launches himself into the air with powerful beats of his wings. Jon closes his eyes and lets his consciousness merge with his companions, seeing through dragon eyes as they rise above the tree line. The world spreads below them like a great map, Winterfell's towers pointing skyward like stone fingers, the Wolfswood stretching green and white to the horizon, the King's Road winding south toward lands Jon has never seen. Flying with Dracarys feels like coming home to a place he's never been. The sensation of wind beneath wings, of muscles working in perfect harmony with will, of freedom unlimited by earth-bound concerns. It fills a need in Jon's soul he didn't know existed. When they dive and climb and wheel through the morning sky, they move as one being with 2 bodies. But such freedom comes at a price. From the ground, Dracarys appears as a dark speck against the clouds, but keen eyes might recognize what they see. Already, travelers on the King's Road speak of dragons in the north. Merchants tell tales in taverns, and those tales spread like ripples in a pond. In King's Landing, the reports reach Robert Baratheon as he holds court in the shadow of the Iron Throne. The king's massive frame has grown softer with peace and wine, but his voice still carries the authority of the man who shattered Rhaegar Targaryen's chest with a warhammer. "Dragons," he snorts, dismissing the latest raven from the north with a wave of his jeweled hand. "Next they'll tell me the others have returned to dance with the dead. The north breeds tall tales like it breeds wolves, wild and numerous." But Varys the spider listens from the shadows behind the throne, his soft hands folded within his silk sleeves. That evening, he dispatches his little birds north with coin and careful instructions. If dragons have indeed returned to Westeros, the Master of Whisperers must know the truth of it. The reports that return over the following weeks paint a picture that troubles the eunuch greatly. A boy called Jon Snow, bastard son of Lord Eddard Stark, commands a living dragon in the grounds of Winterfell. The creature grows daily, and its rider displays abilities that echo the lost powers of old Valyria. "Curious," Varys murmurs to himself as he reads the latest intelligence. "Most curious indeed." Meanwhile, in the free city of Pentos, Prince Viserys Targaryen receives visitors in the manse of Illyrio Mopatis. The young man's violet eyes burn with the fury that has marked his exile, his silver-gold hair hanging lank around a face made gaunt by years of bitterness. "Dragons in Winterfell?" he snarls when the merchant tells him what his own spies have learned. "Impossible. I am the dragon. I am the last of the dragon lords. This is some northern trick, some mummery designed to mock the true blood of old Valyria." But even as he rages, doubt gnaws at him. If there truly is another with the blood of dragons, what does that mean for his claim to the Iron Throne? What does it mean for the destiny he's believed was his alone? Back in the north, Jon remains unaware of the storms his existence stirs in the halls of power. His days are filled with training, with sword and bow, with books and letters, and most importantly, with Dracarys. The dragon learns as quickly as his rider, mastering flight with instinctive grace and showing remarkable intelligence in their exercises. Today, they practice combat maneuvers in a clearing deep within the Wolfswood. Jon has constructed targets from straw and wood, arranged to simulate enemies in battle formation. Dracarys swoops low, his flame precise and controlled, reducing each target to ash without setting the surrounding trees ablaze. "Good," Jon calls out, as the dragon lands beside the smouldering remains. Your aim improves each day. Through their bond, he feels Dracarys' pleasure at the praise. The dragon's emotions are surprisingly complex: pride, affection, fierce protectiveness toward Jon and his family, and underneath it all, a growing awareness of his own power. Sometimes Jon wonders if Dracarys understands better than he does what they're destined to become. The sound of approaching horses draws both their attention. Jon tenses, wondering if they've been discovered by hunters or rangers. But the riders who emerge from the trees bear familiar banners. A small party from Winterfell, led by a figure Jon recognizes despite his youth. Tyrion Lannister sits his horse with easy grace despite his stunted legs, his mismatched eyes bright with intelligence and curiosity. At 21, the dwarf son of Lord Tywin has already earned a reputation for wit and learning that echoes throughout the Seven Kingdoms. His presence here, so far from Casterly Rock, suggests more than casual travel. "Lord Tyrion," Jon says formally, placing himself between the Lannister and Dracarys. "You're far from home." "Indeed I am, Jon Snow. And you're far from the castle as well, with a most unusual companion." Tyrion's gaze fixes on the dragon with undisguised fascination. "May I? I've read every book about dragons ever written, but I never imagined I'd see one in flesh and scale." Jon hesitates, but something in Tyrion's manner suggests genuine scholarship rather than threat. "His name is Dracarys. Don't make any sudden movements." Tyrion dismounts carefully, approaching with the respectful caution of a man who understands he's in the presence of a legendary creature. Dracarys watches him with golden eyes, head cocked slightly, as if evaluating this new person. "Magnificent," Tyrion breathes, stopping just beyond the range of tooth and claw. The old books describe them well, but words cannot capture the reality. The way he moves, the intelligence in his gaze. This is no mere beast, but a thinking being. "He understands more than most people realize," Jon agrees, surprised to find himself warming to the dwarf's obvious appreciation. "I imagine he does. Dragons and their riders share a bond that transcends normal human experience, or so the histories claim." Tyrion's eyes shift to Jon, studying him with the same intensity he showed the dragon. "Tell me, do you dream of flying? Of seeing the world from heights no man can reach?" Jon starts, unnerved by how closely the question strikes home. "Sometimes." "And the fire, does it feel like coming home when you call it forth?" This time Jon's hand moves instinctively to his sword hilt. "How do you know about that?" "Because I've spent my life reading about the bloodlines of old Valyria, about the traits that marked the dragon lords apart from common men." Tyrion's voice grows gentle, reassuring. "The heat that never leaves you, the dreams of flight, the way flame bends to your will, these are the gifts of kings who ruled the greatest empire the world has ever known." "My father is Ned Stark," Jon says firmly. "I'm a bastard of the North, nothing more." "Your father is indeed Ned Stark, in every way that matters," Tyrion agrees, "but genetics care nothing for love and loyalty. Somewhere in your bloodline, boy, flows the fire of old Valyria. The question is where it comes from." Jon remains silent, but Tyrion continues his analysis with the relentless logic that has made him famous. "You're too young to be Robert's bastard from the war. Too old to be the product of any indiscretion since Ned married Catelyn Tully. That leaves only one possibility. You were born during Robert's rebellion to a woman of Targaryen blood." The dwarf's eyes narrow thoughtfully. "The timing fits. The secrecy surrounding your mother fits. And your dragon certainly fits." "Even if what you say is true," Jon says carefully, "what difference does it make?" "All the difference in the world, I suspect. You have a living dragon, Jon Snow. That makes you perhaps the most important person in the Seven Kingdoms, whether you know it or not." That evening, in Winterfell's great hall, Tyrion shares the high table with the Stark family. Baby Rickon sleeps in Catelyn's arms, while the other children listen with fascination to the dwarf's tales of the South. But Tyrion's attention keeps returning to Jon, noting the subtle ways the boy differs from his siblings, the warmth that radiates from him even in winter, the way flames in the hearth seem to bend toward him as if drawn by invisible force, the casual confidence that marks someone accustomed to commanding power, and most telling of all, the way the servants and guards defer to him with a respect that goes beyond his status as Ned Stark's son. "Your son has a remarkable gift with dragons," Tyrion tells Ned privately after the meal ends. "Such bonds are not formed lightly." "Jon is a good lad," Ned replies carefully. "Indeed he is. But he's also something more, isn't he? Something that will inevitably draw the attention of those who fear the return of old Valyria's power." Ned's grey eyes meet the dwarf's mismatched ones across the solar. "What are you suggesting?" "That the boy will need allies in the difficult times ahead. My family has resources, connections, influence that could prove valuable when word of his dragon reaches the wrong ears." "And what would the Lannisters want in return?" Tyrion smiles, but there's no humor in it. The chance to be on the winning side when the Game of Thrones begins anew. Because it will begin anew, Lord Stark. Dragons change everything, and the realm will have to adapt or burn. Outside, winter wind howls around Winterfell's towers. In the distance, a dragon's cry echoes across the ancient stones, and the future grows more uncertain with each passing day. The age of dragons has returned to Westeros, and with it the promise of fire and blood that has slept for 300 years. The royal banners appear on the horizon, like storm clouds gathering before a tempest. From Winterfell's highest tower, Jon Snow watches the king's party approach along the muddy track that serves as the king's road through the north. At 15 years old, he has grown tall and lean, his face bearing the sharp features that mark him as different from his Stark siblings. But it's the creature perched beside him that truly sets him apart from any other young man in the Seven Kingdoms. Dracarys has grown magnificent in the 3 years since Tyrion's visit. Now the size of a destrier, his red and black scales gleam like polished armor in the afternoon light. His wingspan could shadow a dozen men, and when he stretches his serpentine neck, his head rises level with Jon's shoulder. Golden eyes, ancient and intelligent, study the approaching procession with interest that borders on amusement. "The king comes to Winterfell," Jon murmurs to his dragon, running his hand along the warm scales of Dracarys' neck. "Father says we must decide what to do about you." Through their bond, Jon feels the dragon's indifference to the concerns of earthbound rulers. Dracarys recognizes only one authority, his rider, and cares nothing for crowns or thrones. Yet Jon understands the gravity of what approaches. For 15 years, Ned Stark has hidden the truth about his bastard son. Today, that protection may reach its end. In the great hall below, Ned paces before the hearth like a caged wolf. The years have touched his face with lines of worry, and his dark hair shows threads of grey that speak to the burdens he's carried. Beside him, Catelyn holds 3-year-old Rickon on her hip, while their other children prepare for the royal arrival. "We could send Jon away," Catelyn suggests quietly. "To Essos, perhaps, or beyond the wall to join Benjen. The dragon could carry him farther than any horse." "And abandon our family? Our home?" Ned shakes his head. "Jon is my son in every way that matters. I won't exile him to protect Robert's feelings." "Then what? You've seen the ravens from King's Landing. Robert's no fool, Ned. He knows something waits for him in the north, something that threatens his rule." Ned has indeed read the letters, each more demanding than the last. Robert Baratheon, first of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, commands the Lord of Winterfell to present himself and explain the peculiar rumors that spread from the north like wildfire. The king's tone grows harsher with each missive, his legendary temper stoked by wine and the whispers of his small council. "Father," Robb says, entering the hall with Theon at his side. At 15, the heir to Winterfell has grown into a young man worthy of his bloodline, his auburn hair bright and his manner confident. The outriders have arrived. The king will be here within the hour. Ned nods grimly. Gather your siblings, all of them. It's time. The meeting takes place in Ned's private solar, away from the ears of servants and guards. Jon enters to find his family assembled, all the legitimate children arranged in order of age, with himself standing slightly apart as always. But today, the distance feels more pronounced, as if an invisible line divides him from those who share his father's name, but not his nature. The king comes to see the dragon, Ned begins without preamble. He comes to judge whether we pose a threat to his rule. The choice we make today will determine not just Jon's fate, but the fate of House Stark itself. What choice? Arya asks. At 9 years old, she possesses a fierce spirit that reminds everyone of Lyanna Stark. Jon's our brother. The dragon's part of our family now. It's not that simple, little sister, Sansa replies, her voice carrying the careful modulation of a young woman learning the games of courts. At 12, she already shows signs of the beauty that will make her a prize in the marriage market. A dragon changes everything. Even I know that much. Bran, 8 years old, and still fascinated by tales of knights and heroes, bounces slightly on his feet. Will we get to see the king's knights? The Kingsguard? Aye, Theon says darkly. And they'll get to see us. All of us. Jon speaks for the first time, his voice carrying a maturity beyond his years. I won't hide. I won't let this family suffer for what I am. Jon, Ned begins, but his son cuts him off. I've heard the Raven's messages, Father. I know what Robert thinks of Targaryens, what he did to Rhaegar's children during the sack of King's Landing. But I also know what I am, and what Dracarys represents. Hiding will only make us look guilty of something. The boy has a point, Catelyn admits reluctantly. Robert may rage, but he's not entirely unreasonable. If we present Jon properly, explain that he poses no threat to the crown. No threat? Ned laughs bitterly. He has a living dragon, Cat, the first in 300 years. Robert will see that as the greatest threat imaginable. The sound of horns echoes across Winterfell's courtyard, announcing the royal arrival. Through the Solar's window, Jon watches as a procession of gold and crimson pours through the gates. Robert Baratheon rides at its head, his massive frame straining the limits of his destrier's endurance. Behind him come the Queen and her children, the Kingsguard in their white cloaks, and a host of lords and knights that transforms Winterfell's peaceful courtyard into something resembling a military camp. Time's up, Jon says quietly. I'm going down there. Jon, wait! But he's already moving, slipping from the Solar with the fluid grace that marks all his actions. Moments later, Dracarys' shadow passes across the window as the dragon takes flight, called by his rider's silent summons. The great hall of Winterfell has been prepared for a royal feast, but the atmosphere crackles with tension rather than celebration. Robert sits at the high table like a mountain, made flesh, his black beard streaked with grey and his blue eyes sharp despite the wine he's already consumed. Queen Cersei sits beside him, beautiful and terrible in her silk and gold, her green eyes missing nothing as they survey the assembled Northmen. Prince Joffrey, now 12 and already showing signs of the cruelty that marks his nature, whispers comments to his younger siblings that make Princess Myrcella giggle and Prince Tommen frown. Nearby, Ser Jaime Lannister stands in his white cloak and golden armor, the most beautiful man in the Seven Kingdoms, serving as the most dangerous guard any king has ever claimed. Lord Stark, Robert booms as Ned approaches the high table. Too long you've stayed in the north, old friend. Too long you've kept your secrets from your king. Your grace honors us with your presence, Ned replies formally, executing a perfect bow that acknowledges Robert's rank while maintaining his own dignity. Winterfell is yours for as long as you wish to stay. Oh, I think my stay will be quite brief, Robert says, with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Just long enough to see this marvel I've heard so much about. This dragon that supposedly lives in your halls. The word hangs in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Every person in the hall feels the weight of it, the implications that stretch far beyond a simple royal visit. Your Grace, Ned begins, but he's interrupted by a sound that makes every person in the hall freeze. The roar that echoes through Winterfell's stones is like nothing most of them have ever heard. Ancient and terrible, it speaks of power that predates kings and kingdoms, of creatures that ruled the skies when the world was young. Through the great hall's windows, a shadow passes overhead, enormous wings blotting out the afternoon sun. 7 hells, Robert breathes, his face going pale beneath his beard. Dracarys lands in the courtyard beyond the hall with ground-shaking force. Through the tall windows, the assembled nobles watch as the dragon folds his wings with predatory grace, his golden eyes scanning the crowd of strangers who have invaded his territory. Jon Snow walks into the great hall as every eye turns to him. He moves with quiet confidence, unarmored and wearing simple northern wool, but radiating authority that makes hardened knights step aside. Behind him, visible through the open doors, Dracarys waits with the patience of a hunting cat. Your Grace, Jon says, approaching the high table with measured steps. I am Jon Snow, bastard son of Lord Eddard Stark, and that is Dracarys, my dragon. The silence that follows could cut steel. Robert stares at the young man before him, dark of hair and eye, lean and strong, with features that stir uncomfortable memories in the king's mind. Beside Robert, Cersei Lannister has gone rigid with something that might be fear or calculation or both. Impossible, Robert whispers, then louder. Impossible. Dragons are dead. I killed the last of their riders on the Trident. You killed Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, Jon agrees calmly. But dragons are not so easily destroyed. Dracarys hatched from an egg that survived the centuries, waiting for the right moment to return to the world. And you expect me to believe you just found this egg? That it simply decided to hatch for a bastard of Winterfell? Jon meets the king's eyes without flinching. I expect you to believe the evidence of your own senses, Your Grace. Would you like to see what Dracarys can do? Before Robert can respond, Jon steps through the hall's main doors into the courtyard beyond. The assembled nobles follow like sheep drawn by a shepherd, crowding into doorways and windows to witness what comes next. Dracarys raises his great head as Jon approaches, and the bond between them sings with shared purpose. The dragon's throat begins to glow like heated steel, and when he opens his jaws, flame pours forth in a torrent that would melt stone and steel alike. Jon steps directly into the fire. The flames wash over him like water, licking at his clothes and hair without leaving so much as a scorch mark. He stands within the dragon's breath, unharmed, untouched, his dark eyes reflecting the light of dragonfire as if lit from within. When the flames die, he remains standing in a circle of melted snow, his clothing unmarked and his skin showing no sign of burning. By the 7, someone whispers from the crowd. Robert stares at this display with the expression of a man watching his worst nightmares take flesh and walk among the living. Memories flood back. Aerys the Mad King, burning men alive in his throne room, Rhaegar's silver hair streaming behind his black armor on the Trident, the screams of Elia Martell's children as the Mountain did his bloody work. Targaryen, the king breathes, and the word carries all the hatred of 15 years. Your Targaryen blood. But how? Ned, how is this possible? Ned steps forward, his face grave with the weight of secrets finally revealed. Jon is my blood, Robert. My sister's blood. Lyanna's son. Lyanna? Robert's voice cracks like a whip. Lyanna bore no children. She died at that damned tower. Died before... He stops, understanding dawning in his eyes like sunrise. Rhaegar, The bastard prince got her with child. Aye, Ned confirms quietly. Jon is the son of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen. I've raised him as my own son these 15 years, but his blood carries fire as well as ice. The revelation hits the assembled nobles like a physical blow. Whispers run through the crowd like wildfire as the implications sink home. A Targaryen heir lives, with a dragon to enforce his claims. The wheel of fortune has turned again, and the realm may shake with the consequences. "Kill him," Cersei says suddenly, her voice cutting through the whispers like a blade. "Kill the dragon spawn before he can threaten our children, before he can claim what isn't his." But Tyrion Lannister steps forward from the crowd, his mismatched eyes bright with calculation. "Might I suggest a different course, Your Grace?" The boy has shown no disloyalty to the realm. He's been raised by the most honorable man in the Seven Kingdoms, taught northern values of duty and honor. Perhaps we could find a way to use this development to our advantage. "Use it how?" Robert demands. "Dragons are tools of war, Your Grace. Tools that haven't been available to any king for 3 centuries. Jon Snow could be a powerful ally to the crown, a weapon that ensures your dynasty's security rather than threatening it." Jon speaks for himself, his young voice carrying across the courtyard with surprising authority. "I have no desire for thrones or crowns, Your Grace. Winterfell is my home, the North is my land. If you'll have me, I would serve the realm as my father has taught me, with honor and loyalty." Robert studies the young man before him, weighing the threat against the opportunity. A dragon in service to the Iron Throne would make his rule unassailable. But can he trust the son of the man he killed? The blood of the madman who burned his generation's fathers alive? The king's decision will determine the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. In the courtyard of Winterfell, as autumn winds carry the promise of winter, the future hangs in the balance, like a sword suspended over the realm. Jon Snow stands beside his dragon, neither pleading nor threatening, simply waiting for the judgment of a king who must choose between fear and opportunity. The Age of Dragons has returned to Westeros, and Robert Baratheon must decide whether that heralds doom or deliverance for his kingdom. The great hall of Winterfell feels smaller with a king's retinue filling its ancient stones. 3 days have passed since Jon's revelation, 3 days of tense negotiations and careful words that dance around the truth like courtiers avoiding a sleeping dragon. Robert Baratheon sits at the high table, his massive frame making the carved chair seem like a child's seat, while his pale blue eyes study Jon with the intensity of a man weighing life and death. "The offer stands," Robert says, his voice carrying across the hall to where Jon stands before the hearth. Dracarys coils nearby, no longer hidden, but not quite welcome either, his golden eyes reflecting the firelight as he watches the assembled nobles with predatory interest. "Come south with me, boy. Serve the realm as your dragon's power deserves to be served. King's Landing has need of such strength." Jon feels the weight of every gaze in the hall, his family's worried faces, the Queen's calculating stare, the mixture of fear and fascination from the visiting lords. At 16, he understands the politics behind Robert's words. This is no generous offer, but a gilded cage, a way to control what the king cannot destroy. "Your Grace honors me," Jon replies carefully, "but my place is in the north. My family is here. My duty is here." Robert's face darkens like storm clouds gathering over the narrow sea. "Duty? Your duty is to the realm, boy, not to one corner of it. A dragon changes the balance of power itself. Do you think you can simply play at being a northern lord while commanding fire and death? I think I can serve the realm better by protecting its northern borders," Jon says with quiet firmness. "The lands beyond the wall grow restless, Your Grace. Raiders and wildlings test our defenses each season. Dracarys could ensure that threat never reaches the soft lands of the south." Before Robert can respond, the sound of hooves echoes across Winterfell's courtyard. A new banner appears at the gates, the crowned stag of House Baratheon, but quartered with the fiery heart of R'hllor. Stannis Baratheon has arrived from Dragonstone, drawn by reports too extraordinary to be believed. The king's younger brother enters the hall like winter incarnate, lean and hard where Robert is massive and soft, his jaw set in the perpetual grimace that marks his expression. At 34, Stannis Baratheon has spent his adult life in his brother's shadow, but his sharp intellect and tactical brilliance have earned him grudging respect throughout the Seven Kingdoms. "Brother," he says, with a curt nod to Robert. Then his grey eyes fix on Jon with laser intensity. "So this is the dragon rider I've heard so much about." "Stannis," Robert grunts, "couldn't stay away from the spectacle, could you?" "I came to see if the reports were true, to judge whether this development serves the realm or threatens it." Stannis approaches Jon with the measured pace of a man evaluating a weapon. "Show me." There's no request in the words, no politeness. Stannis Baratheon commands like a man accustomed to obedience, and his tone suggests he'll accept nothing less than complete demonstration. Jon looks to his father, seeking guidance, but Ned's expression offers only silent support for whatever choice his son makes. Taking a breath, Jon extends his consciousness toward Dracarys, feeling their bond sing with shared purpose. The dragon rises to his full height, magnificent and terrible in the firelight. His wings spread wide enough to touch the hall's stone walls, and when he opens his jaws, the glow of inner flame paints the assembled nobles in shades of gold and red. But instead of unleashing destruction, Dracarys demonstrates precision, breathing narrow streams of fire that spell out words in the ancient Valyrian script across the hall's floor. Zaldrezes Buzdari Ixos Daur. A dragon is not a slave. Stannis studies the burning letters with the attention of a scholar examining a rare manuscript. Remarkable. The control required for such precision suggests intelligence far beyond any mere beast. His eyes return to Jon. "And you share consciousness with the creature?" "We are bonded," Jon confirms. "What he experiences, I experience. What I will, he wills. Useful in battle, I imagine. No lag between command and execution, no possibility of misunderstanding." Stannis circles dragon and rider like a general inspecting troops. The tactical applications are staggering. A single dragon could shatter cavalry charges, siege castle walls, destroy entire fleets if properly deployed. "Stannis," Robert warns, recognizing the dangerous gleam in his brother's eyes. "The boy could serve at Dragonstone," Stannis continues, ignoring the warning. "Learn proper warfare, strategic thinking. A dragon without tactical training is merely a large beast. A dragon with military discipline could conquer kingdoms." "My place is in the north," Jon repeats, but his voice carries less certainty than before. The temptation Stannis offers, real training in the arts of war, the chance to become something greater than a bastard with an unusual pet, speaks to ambitions Jon barely acknowledges to himself. The debate might have continued, but a raven's cry interrupts their discussion. Maester Luwin enters the hall with a scroll bearing seals from across the narrow sea, his ancient face grave with whatever news he carries. "My lords," he says formally, "word from Pentos. Prince Viserys Targaryen has sent envoys to the free cities, proclaiming the return of dragons to the world. He claims kinship with Jon Snow and demands recognition as his rightful king." The silence that follows could cut glass. Every eye in the hall turns to Jon, measuring his reaction to this development. Robert's hand moves instinctively toward his warhammer, while Cersei's face goes pale with renewed fear. "What does he offer?" Jon asks, his voice carefully neutral. "Gold, armies, a crown if you'll bend the knee to him. He speaks of reclaiming the Iron Throne, of restoring the Targaryen dynasty with dragons at its head." Luwin pauses, studying the young man's expression. "He also threatens war if you refuse his summons." Jon laughs, a sound carrying genuine amusement rather than mockery. "Threatens war? With what?" 300 Pentoshi sellswords and delusions of grandeur. He shakes his head. I've heard the reports of Prince Viserys. He's spent his exile begging for scraps from merchant princes. I'll not trade a father who raised me with love for a would-be king who offers only empty titles. Wisely spoken, Stannis says approvingly. But the precedent concerns me. If one Targaryen pretender can make such claims, others will follow. The realm needs to know where your loyalties lie. Before anyone can respond, horns sound from Winterfell's walls, not the measured notes of ceremony, but the harsh blast that signals attack. Through the hall's tall windows, smoke rises from the direction of Wintertown, and the orange glow of fires paints the afternoon sky. Wildlings, Ser Roderick reports as he enters the hall at a run. A large band, maybe 200 men. They've fired the granaries and are moving toward the town's heart. They're better armed and organized than usual. Someone's leading them. Jon is moving before the words fully register. Dracarys feels his urgency through their bond and rises to follow. But Jon places a restraining hand on the dragon's neck. "This is what you want to see, isn't it?" he asks the assembled nobles. "What a dragon can do in service to the realm." Robert nods grimly. "Show us, boy. Show us what fire and blood can accomplish when properly directed." The flight to Wintertown takes only minutes on Dragonback, but those minutes stretch like hours for Jon as he sees the destruction below. Wildlings pour through the settlement streets like a plague, their weapons crude but effective, their faces painted with the symbols of the tribes beyond the wall. They've chosen their moment well. Most of Winterfell's garrison is scattered on patrol, leaving the town vulnerable to swift assault. But they haven't planned for a dragon. Dracarys descends like divine judgment, his roar echoing off the burning buildings and sending the raiders scrambling for cover. The precision he demonstrated in the Great Hall becomes deadly purpose, as streams of dragonfire cut through the wildling ranks with surgical accuracy. Buildings are left untouched, while their attackers burn, screaming, in the streets between them. Jon guides his dragon with the skill born of years of practice, targeting the wildling leaders while leaving their followers alive to flee. This isn't massacre, but warfare. Controlled, precise, devastating to enemy morale while minimizing civilian casualties. The battle, if it can be called that, lasts less than an hour. Those wildlings who can still run flee back toward the wall, carrying tales of the Dragon of Winterfell to every tribe beyond the ice. The town's fires are quickly extinguished, the wounded tended, the dead honored. When Jon returns to Winterfell that evening, he finds the royal party assembled in the courtyard to greet him. Robert studies the young man who dismounts from his dragon without a trace of soot or ash on his person, noting the easy confidence that speaks of battles won and enemies scattered. Effective, Stannis observes with professional appreciation. Minimal casualties, maximum psychological impact. The wildlings will think twice before raiding this far south again. For now, Jon agrees, but they'll return eventually. They always do. That's why the North needs its defenders close to home, not serving in southern castles. That night, as the royal party prepares for their departure on the morrow, Jon walks the battlements of Winterfell with his siblings. Sansa, now 13 and growing beautiful, studies him with new eyes that hold equal measures of pride and concern. "You've changed," she says softly. "Since the dragon hatched, since today's battle, you're becoming something larger than just our brother." "I'm still the same person," Jon protests, but he knows it's not entirely true. The bond with Dracarys has changed him, awakened aspects of his nature that might have slept forever without the dragon's presence. Arya, 10 and fierce as a winter storm, grins at him with unfeigned delight. "You looked magnificent up there, like something out of old Nan's stories, like the heroes in the songs. Heroes in songs usually die gloriously," Bran points out, with the macabre fascination of a 9-year-old. "Will you die gloriously too?" "I plan to live boringly," Jon replies, ruffling his younger brother's hair. "Protecting the north, serving the family, growing old in the same castle where I was raised." But even as he speaks the words, Jon knows fate may have other plans. Dragons change everything. Tyrion was right about that. The choice he makes now will determine not just his own future, but the future of the Seven Kingdoms. Standing on Winterfell's ancient walls with his dragon perched nearby and his family around him, Jon Snow makes his decision. He will remain in the north, serve House Stark, protect the realm from threats beyond the wall. Let kings and queens play their games in the south. The Dragon of Winterfell has found his purpose, and it lies in the cold lands he calls home. But in the distance, ravens take wing toward every corner of the known world, carrying word of what they've witnessed. The age of dragons has begun again, and the realm will never be the same. Snow falls heavily on Winterfell's ancient stones as the year 299 AC draws toward its close. In the practice yard, Jon Snow moves through sword forms with the fluid grace of a born warrior, his blade singing through the air as steam rises from his heated skin. At 16, he has grown into his frame, tall and lean, with the controlled strength that marks both Stark and Targaryen bloodlines. But it's the shadows in his dark eyes that speak of burdens beyond his years. Nearby, Dracarys coils around one of the yard's wooden posts like a serpent of living flame. The dragon has grown magnificent in his 4th year, now large enough for Jon to ride comfortably, his wingspan broad enough to carry them both above the tallest towers of Winterfell. Red and black scales gleam even in the grey winter light, and his golden eyes track every movement in the yard with predatory intelligence. "Your form improves," Ser Rodrik observes as Jon completes the sequence. The old knight has spent months adapting traditional sword training to account for Jon's unique circumstances, teaching him to fight both afoot and dragonback, to coordinate blade work with his mount's aerial maneuvers. But your mind wanders. What troubles you? Jon lowers his practice blade, his breath misting in the cold air. Dreams. Strange dreams that feel more like memories than imagination. The dreams have grown stronger with each passing night, visions of ice that burns colder than any fire, of darkness that swallows light itself, of eyes blue as winter sky that hold no warmth of life. Through his bond with Dracarys, Jon feels his dragon's unease. The creature grows restless as winter deepens, pacing his roost and crying out in the night, with sounds that raise hackles on every dog in Winterfell. "What kind of dreams?" Ser Rodrik asks, though his weathered face suggests he suspects the answer. Ice and darkness. Things that move without life, that hunger without need. Jon sheathes his blade and walks to where Dracarys waits. The dragon's warmth flows through their bond, steadying him. "Something stirs beyond the wall, sir. Something that makes Dracarys afraid, and dragons fear very little." Before Ser Rodrik can respond, the sound of hooves echoes across the courtyard. A small party approaches Winterfell's gates, Night's Watchmen in black cloaks, their faces grim with winter's bite and something deeper. Leading them rides a figure Jon recognizes despite the years that have weathered his features. Benjen Stark, the Stark in Winterfell who chose the wall over lordship, dismounts in the courtyard with the careful movements of a man who has ridden hard and far. At 36, Ned's younger brother has grown lean and hard as iron, his dark hair streaked with premature grey and his eyes holding depths that speak of secrets carried in the frozen waste beyond civilization's edge. "Uncle," Jon calls out, approaching with Dracarys padding silently beside him. Benjen's eyes fix on the dragon with a mixture of wonder and wariness that has become familiar to Jon. Even those who've heard the tales struggle to accept the reality of a living dragon, the return of power not seen for 3 centuries. "Jon," Benjen says formally, then allows a slight smile to warm his expression. "You've grown since last I saw you. Both of you. You bring word from Castle Black?" Benjen's expression grows grave. Aye. Word that your father needs to hear, and that you should hear as well. Strange things happen beyond the wall, nephew. Things that make old men pray to gods they'd forgotten, and young men wake screaming from dreams of ice. In Ned's solar that evening, the first ranger of the Night's Watch spreads a rough map across the oak table. Charcoal marks show the locations of abandoned wildling villages, each one found empty, with no signs of struggle. Just absence where life once flourished. They're fleeing south, Benjen reports, his finger tracing patterns on the map. Not raiding, not migrating for food or shelter. Running. The free folk don't abandon their homes lightly, but entire tribes have vanished from the Frostfangs. Those we've questioned speak of the cold that kills, of the dead that walk. Wildling superstitions, Ned suggests, but his voice carries little conviction. Perhaps. But 2 nights ago, Sir Waymar Royce led a patrol beyond the wall and failed to return. We found them the next morning. Benjen's voice grows quiet. They were alive when we found them, Ned. All of them. Moving and speaking and trying to kill anyone who came near. But their eyes were blue as winter sky, and they felt no pain when we struck them down. Jon feels Dracarys shift beside him, the dragon's agitation flowing through their bond like smoke. Whatever Benjen describes, it triggers deep instincts in the creature, revulsion and hostility toward something that violates the natural order. You brought one back? Jon asks. Aye, bound and gagged and kept under constant watch. It doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, doesn't tire, just watches with those cold eyes and waits. Benjen looks directly at Jon. We brought it south because Maester Aemon believes you should see it. Your dragon's fire might be the key to understanding what we face. That night, they descend to Winterfell's deepest vaults, where the thing that was once Sir Waymar Royce waits in chains. The creature turns those terrible blue eyes toward them as they enter, and Jon feels Dracarys recoil through their bond. The dragon's entire body radiates hostility toward the undead thing, scales rippling with suppressed flame. The white, for Jon knows instinctively that's what it is, despite never hearing the word before, moves with unnatural smoothness. No breath mists from its lips, no pulse beats in its throat, yet it maintains a horrible parody of life that makes Jon's skin crawl. It doesn't speak, Benjen observes, doesn't respond to questions or commands, but it knows we're here. It watches everything with those eyes. Dracarys hisses, a sound like steam escaping from heated metal. The dragon's throat begins to glow with inner fire, and Jon realizes his mount recognizes an ancient enemy, something from the time when dragons ruled the skies, and winter was held at bay by flame and fury. Fire, Jon says suddenly. That's what you need. Not just any fire, but dragon fire. Without waiting for permission, he opens his consciousness to Dracarys completely. Through the dragon's senses, he perceives the white as a stain against the natural world. Cold beyond cold. Emptiness given form and purpose. Every instinct screams that this thing must be destroyed, must be burned from existence before its corruption can spread. Dracarys opens his jaws and breathes. The flame that engulfs the white burns hotter than any forge. White-hot dragonfire that turns stone to glass and metal to vapor. The creature doesn't scream. It can't scream. But for just a moment, Jon swears he sees relief flicker in those terrible blue eyes before they melt away to nothing. When the fire dies, nothing remains but a puddle of cooling metal from the chains and a scorch mark on the stone floor. By the old gods, Benjen whispers. It's gone. Completely gone. Not even bones remain. Dragonfire doesn't just burn flesh, Jon explains, understanding flowing through him like cold water. It burns the magic that animates such things. The cold that kills, the force that drives the dead to walk. Dragon flame destroys it utterly. In the silence that follows, the implications sink home for all of them. If creatures like this walk beyond the wall in growing numbers, If the ancient enemy stirs in the lands of always winter, then the Night's Watch faces a threat that mortal steel cannot answer. How many? Ned asks quietly. More each week, Benjen admits. The wildlings speak of an army gathering in the deepest cold, led by creatures riding horses made of ice. They call them the Others, the White Walkers from the old stories. He looks directly at Jon. If the tales are true, nephew, your dragon may be the realm's only hope of holding them back. Over the following days, Jon throws himself into training with new purpose. Sir Roderick adapts their exercises to emphasize aerial combat and coordinated attacks. Jon practices calling dragonfire with precision and control, learning to direct Dracarys' flame like a weapon of war rather than a tool of destruction. The dragon seems to understand their new mission. His restlessness fades, replaced by focused determination that mirrors Jon's own. Through their bond, Jon senses Dracarys' eagerness to face the ancient enemy, to fulfill the purpose for which dragons were perhaps always intended, guardians against the cold and dark. You're preparing for war, Arya observes one evening as she watches Jon practice with weighted blades in the armory. At 10, she's grown into a fierce little warrior herself, her needlework abandoned in favor of swordplay, despite Catelyn's protests. War's coming whether we prepare or not, Jon replies, adjusting his stance and flowing into the next form. The question is whether we'll be ready when it arrives. Can I help? I'm good with a sword now, better than Bran. I could fight beside you and Dracarys. Jon pauses in his exercises to study his little sister's earnest face. The thought of Arya facing creatures like the White makes his blood run cold. But he also knows her spirit will not be contained by walls or warnings. You can help by growing stronger, by learning everything Sir Roderick can teach you. When the time comes, and it will come, the North will need every sword, every arrow, every person willing to stand against the darkness. That night, Jon stands on Winterfell's highest tower, with Dracarys perched beside him. The dragon's warmth keeps the winter wind at bay as they gaze north toward the wall, toward the lands of endless cold, where something ancient stirs. They're coming, Jon says softly, not needing to specify who. Through their bond, he feels Dracarys' agreement, the dragon's absolute certainty that their destiny lies in the conflict ahead. But we'll be ready. Fire and ice, united against the darkness. The songs may say heroes die gloriously, but we're going to live long enough to see the dawn. In the distance, a wolf howls across the winter landscape, and Dracarys answers with a roar that echoes off the ancient stones. The dragon's cry carries across the north like a promise, that when the long night comes, fire will meet ice, and the realm of men will not fall without a fight. The age of dragons has returned to Westeros, and the ancient war between ice and fire begins anew. The raven arrives at dawn, black wings beating against grey sky as it circles Winterfell's highest tower. Jon Snow stands in the rookery with Maester Luwin, watching the old man break the seal with trembling fingers. At 16, Jon has learned to read the subtle signs that mark important news, the quality of the parchment, the haste of the script, the weight of silence that follows the opening of certain letters. This letter carries the weight of kingdoms. Your father has been arrested, Luwin says quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Charged with treason against King Joffrey. The boy king demands that all houses declare for him or be declared enemies of the realm. Jon feels the words hit him like physical blows. Through his bond with Dracarys, his shock and rage flow to the dragon perched outside the tower window. The great beast's golden eyes narrow to slits, and a low rumble builds in his throat. Not quite a roar, but the promise of one. Joffrey is Robert's heir, Jon says, struggling to understand. Why would father oppose him? Because Robert is dead, Luwin replies, reading further into the letter. Killed in a hunting accident, they say, though the timing seems convenient. The Queen moves quickly to secure her son's rule, and your father stands in her way. In the great hall below, Robb Stark paces before the hearth like a caged wolf. At 16, he has grown into a young man worthy of his bloodline, tall and strong, with auburn hair that catches the firelight, and grey eyes that burn with controlled fury. The assembled lords of the North watch him with the mixture of respect and uncertainty that marks men facing their first real test of leadership. "They have my father," Robb says, his voice carrying across the ancient stones. "They have my sisters. They expect us to kneel to the bastard who calls himself king, to accept their version of justice." His hand moves to the hilt of his sword. "I say we show them northern justice instead." "And march south with what army?" asks Lord Umber, his massive frame making even the great hall seem small. The boy has maybe 20,000 men if he calls every banner. The Lannisters can field twice that, and they have the crown's authority behind them. "They have gold and Southron knights," Catelyn says from her seat at the high table, little Rickon sleeping in her lap. "We have justice and righteous anger. Sometimes that's enough." Jon enters the hall as the lords debate strategy and alliances. Every eye turns to him as he approaches, noting the way Dracarys shadows him through the tall windows, a constant reminder of the power that sets him apart from other young men. "What word from the capital?" Robb asks. "Father lives, but barely. They've named him traitor and demand his confession." Jon's voice carries the controlled anger that has become his trademark. Joffrey sits the Iron Throne and calls for our submission. "Then he'll have a long wait," Lord Karstark growls. "The North remembers its own. We don't kneel to boy kings and southern usurpers." The debate that follows shapes the fate of kingdoms. Robb will march south with the main strength of the North, seeking allies among the Riverlands, and perhaps the Vale. But someone must remain to guard Winterfell and protect the children who cannot fight. "I'll stay," Jon says when the question arises. "The North needs defenders, and Dracarys can hold Winterfell against any force that marches this far." "You should come with us," Robb argues. "A dragon in the field would end this war before it truly begins. One pass over the Lannister host, and they'd scatter like leaves before wind. And leave the North defenseless. Leave Bran and Rickon and Mother unprotected." Jon shakes his head. "My place is here, protecting what Father built. You take the war south, I'll make sure there's still a North to come home to." The decision divides the family, but unites their purpose. Robb will be a king of war, leading armies and forging alliances. Jon will be a king of home, holding the ancient seat of House Stark against all who would take it. 3 days later, the host of the North rides south under grey banners, 20,000 men following their young lord toward an uncertain fate. Jon watches from Winterfell's walls as the column disappears into the distance, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a cloak. Beside him, Theon Greyjoy shifts uncomfortably. At 20, the heir to Pike has spent over a decade as ward to House Stark, but the bonds of affection have never quite overcome the bonds of blood and salt. Recent letters from his father carry implications that trouble Jon more than he lets show. "Strange times," Theon observes, his voice carefully neutral. "Kings rising and falling, dragons returning to the world, makes a man wonder where his loyalties truly lie." "With honor," Jon replies firmly. "With the family that raised us, with the oaths we've sworn." "Aye," Theon agrees, but something in his tone suggests doubt. "Always with honor." The first test comes a month later, when longships appear on the western coast like wolves emerging from morning fog. Ironborn reavers, taking advantage of the North's divided strength to claim what they believe weakness has left unguarded. 50 ships carrying 2,000 men, led by captains who remember the glory days when iron took what gold could not buy. The attack comes at dawn, coordinated strikes against the fishing villages of Sea Dragon Point. Raiders pour ashore with axes and cruel laughter, expecting to find only farmers and fishermen to resist their advance. They burn and pillage with the casual cruelty of men who see mainlanders as sheep to be sheared, but they haven't planned for a dragon. Jon receives word of the attacks before the sun clears the horizon, ravens flying from burning villages carrying desperate pleas for aid. He doesn't hesitate, doesn't consult with advisors or wait for reinforcements. Some threats require immediate response, and the Ironborn have made themselves such a threat. Dracarys rises from Winterfell's courtyard, like vengeance given wings, his red and black scales gleaming in the morning light. Jon sits astride the dragon's neck with the easy confidence of years of practice, his sword at his hip and his eyes hard as winter steel. Through their bond, he feels Dracarys' eagerness for battle, the dragon's joy at finally facing enemies worthy of his fire. The flight to Sea Dragon Point takes 2 hours, but those hours stretch like days for the villagers cowering in root cellars and hidden caves. Above them, the Ironborn celebrate their easy victories, dividing plunder and debating which settlements to strike next. They never see death descending from the sky. Jon's first pass over the raider fleet breaks their formation like a hammer striking glass. Dracarys breathes streams of white-hot flame that turn proud longships into floating pyres, their iron fittings melting like candle wax in the dragon's heat. Screams echo across the water as reavers throw themselves overboard, choosing the cold sea over the certainty of burning. "Dragon!" someone shouts from the beach, the word carrying terror that speaks to ancestral memories. "Dragon in the sky!" The psychological effect proves even more devastating than the flames. These are men who fear nothing mortal. Storm and sword, kraken and cold, all hold no terror for warriors raised on iron and salt. But dragons speak to deeper fears, to the understanding that some powers transcend human strength and strategy. Half the raiding party flees to their remaining ships without striking another blow. The other half stands frozen on the beach, staring upward at the creature that has transformed their easy victory into a waking nightmare. Jon guides Dracarys in a second pass, lower this time, close enough that the dragon's wings create gales that flatten beach grass and scatter burning debris. The flame that follows is precise, surgical, targeting the raiders while leaving the captured villagers unharmed in their crude pens. The battle, if it can be called that, lasts less than an hour. Those Ironborn who can still flee do so, carrying tales of the Dragon of Winterfell to every port from Pike to Lannisport. Those who cannot flee burn on the beaches they thought to claim, their ashes mixing with the sand they tried to stain with innocent blood. When Jon lands Dracarys among the smoking ruins of the raider camp, he finds the villagers emerging from their hiding places like flowers opening to sunlight. They look at him with the mixture of awe and gratitude that he's learned to expect, seeing not just a young man with unusual abilities, but a symbol of the North's enduring strength. "Lord Jon," says Willem, the village headman, dropping to one knee despite his advanced years. "The North remembers. We'll not forget this day, nor the dragon that saved our children." "I'm no lord," Jon replies, dismounting from Dracarys with easy grace. "Just a bastard doing his duty to the North and its people." But even as he speaks the words, Jon knows they ring hollow. The power he wields makes him more than any bastard, more than any lord. The choice he faces is whether to use that power for personal ambition or something greater. The answer comes 2 weeks later, carried by a raven whose message turns Jon's world to ash and fury. 3 words, written in Maester Luwin's careful script, that change everything. Eddard Stark dead. Jon reads the letter 3 times before its meaning penetrates. Ned Stark, the man who raised him as a son, who taught him honor and duty and love, has been executed on the steps of the great sept of Baelor. Beheaded like a common criminal, his head displayed on spikes, for the entertainment of southern lords and the instruction of rebellious vassals. The rage that builds in Jon's chest feels like molten metal, hot and dangerous and demanding release. Through his bond with Dracarys, the emotion multiplies, amplified by the dragon's own fury, until the very air seems to burn. The practice yard where Jon receives the news erupts in spontaneous flame as his control shatters, stone cracking from supernatural heat. "Jon!" Maester Luwin calls out in alarm as dragonfire pours from Jon's hands, setting wooden targets ablaze without conscious direction. "Jon, you must control yourself." But control has fled with sanity. The man who taught Jon everything that matters, how to fight, how to think, how to be worthy of the Stark name, despite his bastard birth, lies dead in a southern city, murdered by a boy king's spite and a queen's ambition. The injustice of it burns worse than any flame. Dracarys lands in the courtyard with ground-shaking force, his own rage echoing his rider's pain. The dragon's roar shakes Winterfell's ancient stones, carrying across the countryside like a promise of vengeance. When Jon's eyes meet his mount's golden gaze, understanding passes between them without need for words. "I failed him," Jon whispers, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "He trusted me to protect the North, to be worthy of his love, and I failed." "You did not fail," Catelyn says firmly, approaching despite the heat that radiates from both dragon and rider. "You saved Sea Dragon Point, defended the coast, protected those who needed protection. Ned would be proud of what you've accomplished." "Proud?" Jon laughs, the sound carrying no humor. His head sits on a spike while I played at war with raiders and thieves. I should have been there. Dracarys and I should have burned the Red Keep to ash before they could harm him. And started a war that would consume the realm? Killed innocent servants and children alongside the guilty? Catelyn shakes her head. That's not the man Ned raised you to be. That's not the choice he would make. In the days that follow, Jon struggles to find meaning in a world without Ned Stark's steady presence. The North looks to him for leadership now, not just military protection, but the kind of moral guidance that his father provided for 35 years. The weight of that expectation settles on his shoulders like iron. Letters arrive from across the realm. Robb writes of his victories in the Riverlands, of lords declaring for the king in the north, of plans to rescue Sansa and avenge their father's murder. Other ravens bring word of kings rising in every corner of Westeros. Stannis on Dragonstone, Renly in the Reach, each claiming the throne that Joffrey holds through blood and treachery. But Jon's focus remains on the north and its people. In the Godswood of Winterfell, before the heart tree that has watched over Starks for 8,000 years, he makes his vow. "I'll protect them," he promises the carved face that stares down with ancient eyes. "All of them. The North will not fall while I draw breath or Dracarys spreads his wings. This I swear by the old gods and the new." Dracarys coils around the base of the heart tree, his scales reflecting the red leaves that never fall. Through their bond, Jon feels the dragon's absolute commitment to their shared purpose. Whatever comes, kings or others, fire or ice, they will stand as guardians of the North. The age of dragons has returned to Westeros, and the realm bleeds for it. But in the Godswood of Winterfell, a bastard boy and his dragon make promises that will reshape the world, one flame at a time. Snow falls thick around Winterfell in the early days of the year 300 AC, transforming the ancient castle into something from a winter's tale. From the highest tower, Jon Snow watches the northern lords arrive for the great council he has called, banners streaming behind them in the wind, their breath misting in the cold air as their parties cross the bridge to Winterfell's gates. At 17, Jon has grown into his power, like a sword taking its final shape in the forge. Tall and lean, with the sharp features that mark his mixed heritage, he moves with the controlled grace of a man who has commanded both armies and dragons. Dracarys perches beside him, magnificent in his full growth, large enough now that his wingspan could shadow half of Winterfell's great hall, his red and black scales gleaming like polished armor, even in the grey winter light. "Lord Manderley brings 300 men," Maester Luwin reports, climbing the tower steps with scrolls tucked under his arm. "Lord Umber twice that." Even Lord Bolton has answered the call, though his intentions remain unclear. Jon nods, his attention focused on the column approaching from the south. Not northern banners these, but the gold and crimson of House Lannister, moving with the disciplined precision that marks veteran troops. Tywin Lannister himself rides at their head. The old lion of Casterly Rock come north to settle accounts with the dragon of Winterfell. 20,000 men, Jon observes, his enhanced vision picking out details that would escape normal eyes. Good troops, well equipped. Tywin doesn't do anything by halves. "Will you treat with him?" Luwin asks. "Aye, but from a position of strength." Through his bond with Dracarys, Jon feels the dragon's eagerness for battle, the ancient hunger for worthy foes that has slept too long. Some conversations are best held with fire close at hand. The Great Hall of Winterfell has seen many gatherings in its long history, but few as tense as the one that fills it now. Northern lords sit at long tables, their faces grim with the knowledge that their decisions today will determine the fate of kingdoms. At the high table, Jon sits in the lord's seat his father once occupied, though he wears no crown and claims no royal title. "The situation is clear," Lord Umber begins without preamble. "The boy king in the south demands submission, the Lannisters mass armies to enforce that demand. Robb fights in the Riverlands, but he can't be everywhere at once. The north stands alone." "Not alone," corrects Lady Mormont, her voice cutting through the hall's murmur. "We have the dragon. We have Jon Snow. That changes the balance considerably." All eyes turn to Jon as he rises from his seat. In the year since Ned's death, he has learned to command attention not through birth or title, but through the respect earned by protecting those who cannot protect themselves. When he speaks, hardened warriors listen. "Lord Tywin approaches with 20,000 men and demands our surrender," Jon says, his voice carrying easily across the ancient stones. He offers terms: bend the knee to Joffrey, accept the crown's authority, and the north will be spared further bloodshed. He pauses, meeting the eyes of every lord present. "I've sent him my answer. The north remembers, and we do not kneel to child kings and usurpers." The lords pound their approval on the wooden tables, but Jon raises his hand for silence. "That said, we will not fight this war with northern blood alone. Some weapons require a more direct approach." Before anyone can ask what he means, the sound of wings echoes through the great hall. Dracarys lands in the courtyard beyond the tall windows, his presence immediately felt by every person inside. Through the glass, the assembled lords watch as the dragon stretches his magnificent wings, golden eyes reflecting the torchlight like molten metal. "Tywin Lannister comes north with gold and steel," Jon continues. "But gold cannot buy immunity from dragon fire, and steel melts like candle wax in the heat of old Valyria's fury. The question is not whether we can win this battle, but whether we choose to fight it here or take it to them." The answer comes at dawn, when Jon rises into the grey sky astride Dracarys, leaving Winterfell's towers far below as they fly south to meet the Lannister host. The dragon's flight covers ground faster than any horse, and within 2 hours they spot the enemy column spread across the King's Road like a golden serpent. Jon studies the formation from above, noting the disciplined ranks, the baggage trains, the cavalry screens that mark professional soldiers led by competent commanders. Tywin has arranged his forces to minimize damage from aerial attack, infantry in loose formation, supply wagons spread wide, no concentrated targets that dragonfire could devastate in a single pass. But the old lion has made one crucial mistake. He's planned for a dragon attack, but not for the psychological warfare that precedes it. Dracarys descends like a falling star, not to attack, but to announce their presence. His roar echoes across the countryside, a sound that speaks to ancestral fears buried deep in human memory. Horses rear and bolt despite their training. Supply wagons overturn as terrified animals flee in all directions, and even disciplined soldiers crane their necks skyward to stare at the creature from legend. Jon guides his dragon in a wide circle around the Lannister host, close enough that every man can see him clearly. The dragon of Winterfell astride his mount, death incarnate, surveying potential prey. But he makes no attack, delivers no fire, simply flies, and watches as chaos spreads through the enemy ranks. "Fascinating," comes a familiar voice from below. Tyrion Lannister sits his horse in the command group, his mismatched eyes bright with intellectual curiosity, despite the circumstances. Psychological warfare at its finest. He's not attacking, he's teaching us to expect attack, making every man in this army wonder when the fire will come. Tywin Lannister's face could have been carved from stone as he watches the dragon circle overhead. At 57, the Lord of Casterly Rock has commanded armies longer than Jon has drawn breath, but this is his first experience fighting an enemy that can strike from the sky with impunity. "Crossbows," he commands curtly. "Every man who can draw a string. We may not kill the beast, but we can make its attacks costly." But Jon has no intention of making costly attacks. Instead, Dracarys lands on a hill overlooking the Lannister camp, close enough for conversation, but far enough to avoid crossbow range. When a delegation approaches under a banner of parley, Jon dismounts to meet them on foot, a gesture of respect that doesn't go unnoticed. "Lord Tywin," Jon greets formally as the old lion approaches. "You've come a long way from Casterly Rock." "As have you from your bastard's cradle," Tywin replies, his voice carrying the cold authority that has made him one of the most feared men in Westeros. "Though I hear you've risen somewhat in the world since then." "I've accepted the responsibilities that come with power," Jon says carefully. "The North needs defending. The realm needs protecting. Dragons serve those who serve the innocent." Pretty words. But dragons also serve those who would tear the realm apart with their ambitions. Tywin's green eyes study Jon with calculating intensity. "You could serve the crown, boy. Your power wedded to royal authority could bring peace to the Seven Kingdoms. Peace through submission? Peace through accepting the rule of those who murdered my father?" Jon shakes his head. "There are different kinds of peace, my lord. I prefer the kind that comes through justice." "Justice?" Tywin laughs, a sound like grinding stone. "You speak of justice while threatening the realm with fire and blood? Your father's death was lawful execution for proven treason. The crown acted within its rights." The words hit Jon like physical blows, and through their bond, Dracarys feels his rider's surge of anger. The dragon's throat begins to glow with inner fire, and steam rises from his nostrils as the ancient fury of old Valyria stirs in response to Jon's emotion. "Careful, my lord," Jon says quietly, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "There are words that should not be spoken within hearing of dragons." For a moment, the two men face each other across a gulf of years and ideology, the old order of gold and politics against the new power of fire and blood. Around them, thousands of soldiers wait with weapons ready, understanding that the next word spoken could determine whether armies clash or kingdoms burn. The tension breaks with the sound of distant roars echoing across the sky. From the south, three shapes approach like thunderclouds given wings, dragons flying in formation, their cries carrying across the landscape like heralds of a new age. Daenerys Targaryen has come to Westeros. Jon feels Dracarys tense beneath him as the other dragons approach. Through their bond, he senses his mount's mixture of excitement and wariness, recognition of kinship, tempered by uncertainty about these newcomers who smell of fire and foreign lands. The three dragons land in the field between the Lannister host and Jon's position, their riders dismounting with the fluid grace of those born to command. Daenerys herself appears smaller than Jon expected. A young woman, barely 16, silver gold hair streaming behind her like captured starlight. But her presence fills the space around her like heat from a forge, and her violet eyes hold depths that speak of power earned rather than inherited. Beside her stand advisors Jon recognizes from description: Ser Jorah Mormont in his worn mail, Tyrion's brother Tyrion himself, looking intrigued by this development, and others whose faces mark them as veterans of conflicts across the narrow sea. "Cousin," Daenerys says, as she approaches, her voice carrying the musical accent of old Valyria. Or should I say nephew? The bloodlines become complex when dragons return to the world. "Your Grace," Jon replies formally, offering a respectful bow that acknowledges her royal blood without accepting her authority. "You honor the North with your presence. The North that sheltered my family's blood when all the world sought to destroy it?" She studies him with the intensity of someone cataloguing threats and opportunities. "I think the honor is mine, Jon Snow. Or should I call you Jon Targaryen?" Before Jon can respond, her largest dragon, black as night with red markings that echo Dracarys' coloring, approaches with measured steps. Drogon, Jon realizes, named for the husband she lost to Dothraki treachery. The two dragons regard each other with the careful assessment of apex predators meeting for the first time. Then, to everyone's amazement, Drogon dips his great head in what can only be described as a bow of greeting. Dracarys responds in kind, and suddenly the air fills with dragon song, complex harmonies that speak of recognition, kinship, and shared purpose that transcends human politics. "They know each other," Daenerys breathes, wonder coloring her voice. Across years and distance, they recognize the blood of old Valyria. "As do I," Jon says quietly. But recognition and submission are different things. The North has bent the knee to southern rulers before. Each time, it has ended in northern blood spilled for southern ambitions. "Then perhaps it's time for a different arrangement," Daenerys suggests. "One that respects both our claims and our responsibilities." The negotiation that follows reshapes the political map of Westeros. Jon speaks for the North, arguing for independence within a larger alliance. Daenerys presents her claim to the Iron Throne, offering partnership rather than dominion. Around them, the great lords of both armies watch history being written in words rather than blood. "Joint rule," Jon proposes finally. "You take the southern kingdoms that have never understood the North's ways. I hold the lands beyond the neck, protecting them from threats you cannot imagine. Our dragons ensure that neither realm faces its enemies alone." "And if our interests conflict," Daenerys asks pragmatically, "then we negotiate as equals, not as conqueror and conquered." Jon meets her violet gaze with his own dark eyes. Fire and ice, united but not bound, strong enough together to face whatever darkness comes. Tywin Lannister watches this exchange with the expression of a man seeing carefully laid plans collapse before his eyes. Two Targaryens with 4 dragons between them represent a shift in power that makes armies and gold irrelevant. The age of politics as usual has ended before his eyes. "The Crown will never accept such division," he says finally. "The Crown will accept what it must," Daenerys replies, her voice carrying the iron authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. The choice is simple: negotiate with us, or face the full fury of awakened dragons. That evening, as the sun sets over a field where 3 armies have gathered without battle, Jon stands with his dragon cousin, watching their mounts interact with the complex rituals of dragonkind. Drogon, Viserion, Rhaegar, and Dracarys move through aerial displays that speak of hierarchy, territory, and mutual respect. They make it look easier than it is, Daenerys observes. Dragons understand power in ways humans struggle with, Jon agrees. Perhaps that's why the old empire lasted so long. When your authority comes from creatures that embody natural law, politics becomes simpler. Or more complex. 2 dragon lords means 2 sets of priorities, 2 definitions of justice. She turns to study him in the fading light. Can we trust each other, Jon Snow? Can fire and ice truly unite without one consuming the other? Jon considers the question as their dragons settle into companionable rest nearby. In the distance, armies prepare for whatever tomorrow brings, alliance or war, negotiation or devastation. We'll find out, he says finally. But I think the realm has greater enemies than each other. If the old stories are true, if the darkness beyond the wall truly stirs, then dragons united may be the only hope humanity has. Above them, 4 dragons chorus their agreement, and the age of fire and ice begins in earnest. The horn of winter sounds across the 7 kingdoms, like the death knell of ages, its voice carrying farther than any mortal instrument should reach. From Winterfell's highest tower, Jon Snow watches the northern horizon, where an unnatural darkness spreads, like spilled ink against the winter sky. At 17, he has grown into the destiny that chose him in his cradle, no longer the bastard boy who found a dragon egg, but the dragon lord whose fire will either save the realm or watch it burn. Dracarys perches beside him, magnificent in his full power, red and black scales gleaming even in the failing light. Through their bond, Jon feels his dragon's readiness for the battle that approaches, not mere human war, but the ancient struggle between ice and fire that has slumbered for 8,000 years. The wall has fallen, Daenerys says, as she joins him on the tower, her violet eyes reflecting the distant glow of supernatural cold. At 16, the Dragon Queen has aged beyond her years through conquest and loss, but standing beside her fellow Dragon Lord, she appears younger, a girl facing the end of the world with courage born of necessity. Below them, Winterfell prepares for siege, not against mortal enemies, but against death itself. The great host Jon has assembled fills the castle and its surroundings, Northmen and Southrons united under dragon banners, their breath misting in air that grows colder with each passing hour. 40,000 men and women, the largest army the North has seen since Aegon's conquest, all sworn to hold this line against the darkness. "How long do we have?" Jon asks, though he suspects he knows the answer. Hours, perhaps less. Daenerys gestures toward the approaching storm front that moves with unnatural purpose. "My scouts report the dead march without rest, without pause. Their numbers..." She shakes her head. Every person who has died north of Winterfell in the past 1,000 years walks with them now. Through the tall windows of the tower, Jon sees the other dragons preparing for battle. Drogon, Viserion, and Rhaegar spread their wings in the courtyard below, their riders checking harnesses and weapons with the careful precision of warriors who know this may be their last preparation. 4 dragons against the army of the dead, odds that would have been laughable in the age of men, but which carry weight in the age of ice and fire. "The Night King will come for me," Jon says, with certainty that surprises even him. "This started with a Targaryen. It will end with one." "Which Targaryen?" Daenerys asks, her hand resting on the pommel of her Valyrian steel blade. "You carry ice in your veins as well as fire. Perhaps that's what we've been missing, Not fire against ice, but fire and ice working together. The battle begins at dawn, though dawn brings little light to skies choked with supernatural winter. The dead pour across the landscape like a grey tide, their silence more terrible than any war cry. At their head march the White Walkers, beings of living ice, whose presence turns breath to frost and blood to slush in mortal veins. But leading them all rides a figure that makes even hardened warriors whisper prayers to forgotten gods. The Night King sits his mount of living ice, his blue eyes burning with cold fire as ancient as the wall itself. When he raises his ice blade in salute to the castle before him, the temperature drops so suddenly that sentries' tears freeze on their cheeks. "Now," Jon commands, his voice carrying across Winterfell's walls through the horn that Samwell Tarly sounds from the battlements. 4 dragons rise into the grey sky like stars breaking through storm clouds. Jon guides Dracarys into the laid position, feeling through their bond the mixture of anticipation and ancient recognition that flows through his mount. This is what dragons were born for. Not conquest or politics, but the defense of life against the void. The first pass breaks the dead's advance like a hammer striking glass. 4 streams of dragonfire carve burning channels through the endless ranks, reducing whites to ash that the wind scatters across the battlefield. But for every dozen destroyed, 100 more take their place, and the Night King's laughter echoes across the field like breaking ice. "They're too many," Daenerys calls through the mental link that connects all dragon riders. "We need a different strategy." Jon banks Dracarys toward where the Night King waits, understanding flowing through him like cold water. This won't be won by burning whites. They'll fight until the source of their animation is destroyed, until the ancient evil that gives them purpose returns to whatever hell spawned it. The duel that follows shakes the foundations of Winterfell itself. Jon and Dracarys dance through the air with the Night King's ice dragon, a creature of supernatural cold that breathes frost instead of flame. Where their attacks meet, steam explodes in great clouds that blind mortal eyes and leave the battlefield shrouded in mist. But Jon possesses advantages the Night King hasn't anticipated. Through his bond with Dracarys, he experiences the battle from multiple perspectives simultaneously, feeling the dragon's instincts, seeing through enhanced senses, moving with precision that no single consciousness could achieve. More importantly, his mixed heritage allows him to understand both sides of this ancient conflict. Fire alone cannot defeat ice, but fire guided by ice's understanding can. At the crucial moment, when the Night King presses his attack with supernatural fury, Jon makes his choice. He opens himself completely to the cold, allowing winter's essence to flow through him, even as dragonfire burns in his veins. The contradiction should destroy him, should tear his mortal form apart with conflicting forces. Instead, it makes him something new. Ice and fire unite within Jon's body, creating harmony where there should be war. Through this fusion, he understands what the Night King truly is. Not evil incarnate, but a force of nature corrupted by its own power, winter given consciousness and twisted into something that destroys rather than renews. "You were meant to bring winter," Jon says, as their mounts circle each other high above the battlefield, "to clear away what was old and make room for what would come. But you forgot your purpose, became drunk on ending rather than beginning." The Night King's response is wordless fury, ice spears hurled with force enough to shatter stone. But Jon doesn't dodge. Instead, he catches the projectiles in hands that burn with inner fire, watching them melt and reform as droplets of pure water. "I understand now," Jon continues, guiding Dracarys closer, despite the supernatural cold that radiates from their enemy. "Fire and ice aren't enemies. They're partners in the great cycle, one clearing away the old, the other nurturing the new. You've forgotten that." What happens next defies every law of nature and magic that scholars have ever recorded. Jon reaches out to touch the Night King directly, allowing the forces within him, dragonfire and stark ice, to flow into the ancient being, not to destroy, but to remind. For one impossible moment, the Night King remembers what he was before corruption, winter's gift to a world that needed renewal, the force that cleared away stagnation to make room for growth. The realization hits him like physical pain, centuries of perverted purpose colliding with original intent. The explosion that follows can be seen from Old Town to the Wall. Light and darkness, heat and cold, life and death meet in a confluence that rewrites the fundamental laws governing Westeros. When it fades, the Night King is gone. Not destroyed, but transformed back into what winter was always meant to be. Across the battlefield, the army of the dead simply stops. Not destroyed, but released, allowed to find the rest that was denied them for so long. They collapse into peaceful sleep, their borrowed animation finally ended, their suffering concluded. Jon himself falls from the sky like a broken star, his mortal form unable to contain the forces he's channeled. Dracarys catches him with desperate gentleness, but it's clear that whatever just happened has cost Jon dearly. His breathing comes in shallow gasps, his skin alternating between fevered heat and deathly cold. "Jon!" Daenerys reaches him first as Drogon lands nearby, her hands already glowing with the healing warmth that some dragon lords can channel. "Stay with us. Don't you dare leave us now." For a moment that stretches like eternity, Jon hovers between life and death, ice and fire still warring in his blood. Then Dracarys presses his great head against his rider's chest, breathing the gentlest flame directly into Jon's lungs. Not dragonfire meant to destroy, but the warm breath of life itself. The healing that follows transcends mere magic. Jon's mixed heritage, his understanding of both ice and fire, allows him to survive what would kill any other mortal. When he opens his eyes, they carry flecks of gold that weren't there before. Dragonfire made permanent, ice and fire balanced in perfect harmony. "Did we win?" he asks weakly. "We won," Daenerys confirms, tears of relief streaming down her face. The long night is over. Winter remembers its proper place. The celebration that follows rings across the Seven Kingdoms. From Winterfell to King's Landing, from Old Town to the Wall, people emerge from their hiding places to find the supernatural winter receding, replaced by the natural cold that they can understand and endure. Ravens carry word to every corner of the realm. The dead have fallen, the darkness has lifted, and the age of ice and fire begins in earnest. In the great hall of Winterfell, as spring's first shoots pierce the snow outside, Jon Snow accepts the crown of the North not as a bastard grasping for legitimacy, but as a king worthy of the title through service and sacrifice. Beside him, Daenerys takes her own crown. Not as conqueror, but as partner in the great work of rebuilding what war has broken. "The Seven Kingdoms need unity," Jon says to the assembled lords and ladies, his voice carrying the authority of someone who has looked into the void and emerged unchanged in purpose, if not in power. Not the unity of conquest, but the unity of common cause. The North will remain free, but not isolated. The South will govern itself, but not alone, and dragons will guard both against any darkness that seeks to divide us. The marriage that follows unites more than two young rulers. It binds ice and fire in an alliance that reshapes the fundamental nature of power in Westeros. When Jon and Daenerys exchange vows before the Heart Tree in Winterfell's Godswood, their dragons sing in harmony above them, their voices carrying across a realm that has learned to hope again. Years pass in peace and prosperity. The North rebuilds stronger than before, its people secure in the knowledge that their Dragon King understands both their heritage and their needs. The South finds stability under a queen who rules with wisdom, earned through suffering, her dragons ensuring that no ambitious lord considers rebellion. And in Winterfell's towers, children grow who carry both ice and fire in their veins, the next generation of protectors, raised in peace but trained for the day when darkness might threaten the realm again. On quiet evenings, when the work of ruling is done and the children are asleep, Jon stands with Dracarys on the battlements they once defended. The dragon has grown grey around the muzzle, as has his rider, but their bond remains as strong as ever. Two beings who found each other in infancy and grew together into legend. "Did we do right?" Jon asks the night air, thinking of all the choices that brought them to this moment. The egg in the crypts, the revelation before Robert, the alliance with Daenerys, the final confrontation with winter itself. Dracarys rumbles contentment, his golden eyes reflecting starlight as he surveys the peaceful lands that spread below them. Through their bond, Jon feels the dragon's satisfaction, not with conquest achieved or enemies defeated, but with duty fulfilled and people protected. In the distance, lights flicker in cottage windows where families gather around warm hearths, secure in the knowledge that dragons watch over their dreams. Children play in village squares without fear, their laughter carrying on wind that no longer brings the promise of supernatural cold. This is what they fought for, not glory or power, but the simple right of decent people to live their lives in peace. The songs may remember the Dragon of Winterfell as a hero of legend, but Jon knows the truth is simpler and more important. He was a bastard boy who found love in a family that chose him, who discovered purpose in protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, and who learned that the greatest power isn't the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to know when not to use it. Winter will come again. It always does. But when it arrives, the realm will be ready. Dragons will rise to meet the challenge. Riders will guide them with honor and wisdom, and ice and fire will dance together in the eternal cycle that keeps the world in balance. That's our theory. The Seven Kingdoms is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. April 22nd, 2026, 9:45 and 14 seconds. Glob. Pattern. /projects/Game of Thrones. What if / star. April 22nd, 2026, 9:45 and 19 seconds. Glob pattern. /star game. Star of Star Thrones. Star. April 22nd, 2026, 9:45 and 23 seconds. Bash. Command. /LA. Description. List contents of current directory. April 22nd, 2026, 9:45-29. Read file _path. /users /shadow /desktop /compiled binaries /Claude code generation 5.2 /output files /Game of Thrones. What if 2 hours 12 characters video number 16 script 6 re /project guide Game of Thrones what if v1.json April 22nd 2026 9:45-37. Read file _path /users /shadow /desktop /compiled binaries /Claude code generation 5.2 /output files /Game of Thrones. What if 2 hours 12 characters video number 16 script 6 re /titles.txt. April 22nd 2026 9:45-43. Tool search. Query. Select web search. Max _results. 1. April 22nd 2026 9:45-54. Web search. Query. Rhaegar Targaryen Dragon Egg Game of Thrones ASOSIAF Lore Canon. April 22nd 2026 9:46-04. Web search. Query. Targaryen Dragon Eggs. Baby Cradle Tradition. Jon Snow. Birth 283. AC. Robert's Rebellion Timeline. April 22nd, 2026, 9:46:16. Web search. Query. Jon Snow birth. Robert's Rebellion Timeline. Tower of Joy, 283, AC. Lyanna Stark death. April 22nd, 2026, 9:46:27. Web search. Query. Dragon egg hatching. Game of Thrones, How Dragons Bond. Winterfell crypts. Godswood heat fire. April 22nd, 2026, 9:48:22. Right assos de file _ /path. Users / shadow / desktop / compiled binaries / Claude code. Generation War 2 / output files / Game of Thrones. What if 2 hours 12 characters / video number 16 script 6 re / outline.md quote comma quote content quote colon quote hash. What if Rhaegar's dragon egg hatched for Jon Snow at Winterfell. Canon divergence point. Divergence date April 22nd, 2026, 9:49:57. Right file _ path C : users shadow desktop compiled binaries Claude code generation vi 2 output files Game of Thrones. What if 2 hours 12 characters video number 16 script 6 re chapter 1 txt anahosanporsen torpedenatsao exandish content. What if Rhaegar's dragon egg hatched for Jon Snow at Winterfell? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. April 22nd, 2026, 9:51:29. Right. File _ path C: users shadow desktop compiled binaries Claude code generation vist 2 output files Game of Thrones. What if 2 hours 12 characters video number 16 script 6 re chapter 2 txt content. The crypts of Winterfell echo with small footsteps in the deep hours before dawn. Jon Snow toddles through the NA, April 22nd, 2026, 9:53:26. Right. File _ path C: users shadow desktop compiled binaries Claude code generation v 2 output files Game of Thrones. What if 2 hours 12 characters video number 16 script 6 re chapter 3 txt content. The godswood of Winterfell stands silent in the autumn air. Red leaves drift from the heart tree, settling on the April 22nd, 2026, 9:55:20. Right. File _ path C: users shadow desktop compiled binaries Claude code generation vi 2 output files Game of Thrones. What if 2 hours 12 chapters video number 16 script 6 re chapter 4 txt content. Spring arrives strangely to Winterfell in the year 291 AC. The snows melt too quickly, revealing grass that grows April 22nd, 2026, 9:57:16. Right. File _ path C: users shadow desktop compiled binaries Claude code generation v 2 output files Game of Thrones. What if 2 hours 12 characters video number 16 script 6 re chapter 5 txt content. The training yard of Winterfell rings with the clash of steel on steel in the crisp morning air of 293 AC. John Essen, April 22nd, 2026, 9:59:11. Right. File underscore path. C:// users / shadow / desktop / compiled binaries / Claude code generation war 2 / output files / Game of Thrones what if 2 hours 12 characters / video number 16 script 6 re / chapter 6 .txt content. Dawn breaks cold and clear over Winterfell in the year 295 AC, painting the ancient stones in shades of gold, and April 22nd, 2026, 10:01:27. Right, file underscore path, C:// users / shadow / desktop / compiled binaries / Claude code generation mof 2 / output files / Game of Thrones what if 2 hours 12 characters / video number 16 script 6 re / chapter 7.txt content. The royal banners appear on the horizon like storm clouds gathering before a tempest. From Winterfell's highest T, April 22nd, 2026, 10:03:28. Right, file underscore path, C:// users / shadow / desktop / compiled binaries / Claude code generation 5 2 / output files / Game of Thrones what if 2 hours 12 characters / video number 16 script 6 re / chapter 8.txt content. The great hall of Winterfell feels smaller with a king's retinue filling its ancient stones. 3 days have passed. April 22nd, 2026, 10:05:26. Right. File underscore path, C:// users / shadow ball / desktop / compiled binaries / Claude code generation vi 2 / output files / Game of Thrones what if 2 hours 12 chapters / video number 16 script 6 re / chapter 9.txt content. Snow falls heavily on Winterfell's ancient stones as the year 299 AC draws toward its close. In the practice yard, April 22nd, 2026, 10:07:43. Right, file underscore path, C:// users / shadow / desktop / compiled binaries / Claude code generation 5 2 / output files / Game of Thrones what if 2 hours 12 characters / video number 16 script 6 re / chapter 10.txt content. The raven arrives at dawn, black wings beating against grey sky as it circles Winterfell's highest tower. John Essen, April 22nd, 2026, 10:10. Right, file underscore path, C:// users / shadow / desktop / compiled binaries / Claude code generation 5 2 / output files / Game of Thrones what if 2 hours 12 characters / video number 16 script 6 re / chapter 11.txt content. Snow falls thick around Winterfell in the early days of the year 300 AC, transforming the ancient castle into so, April 22nd, 2026, 10:12:09. Right, file underscore path, C:// users / shadow / desktop / compiled binaries / Claude code generation 5 2 / output files / Game of Thrones what if 2 hours 12 chapters / video number 16 script 6 re / chapter 12.txt content. The horn of winter sounds across the 7 kingdoms like the death knell of ages its voice carrying farther than